I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me in the back? Can you hear my voice in the back? Okay. Great, thank you. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Dow?
Present.
Councilmember Cousins is presently not here but is expected this evening. Councilmember Fisher?
Yes.
Councilmember Knight?
Here.
Councilmember Michelle's?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Here.
Student Rep Colbert is absent this evening, and Student Rep Miller.
Here.
And I'm here too.
Oh, excuse me, and Mayor Keough is here. Thank you.
Okay, there are 3 sets of meeting minutes to approve. We have the City Council DDA work session from July 22nd, the regular City Council meeting from July 22nd, and the City Council work session from July 29th.
I'll move all 3 sets of minutes.
Moved by Smith. Second by Knight. Thank you both. Mr. Smith, I'll let you.
I have no chance.
Okay. Ms. Knight? Anyone else with comments on the minutes? I had just one. On page 3, under C, approval of the minutes, the word absent should be deleted at the bottom. It just needs to say unanimous vote for
Okay.
approval. Page 3,
Oh,
C,
okay. Yep.
there's an extra word there that's carried over from. Welcome, Mr. Cousins.
I looked at it. I was late, but by that time I wasn't late at all.
You're okay. Okay, let's get started. Any other comments on the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the 3 sets of minutes signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, we're down to item D, which is prearranged participation. We have Mike Cloak from Meter Investments here this evening. Welcome. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Thank you for having me back.
You're welcome.
I wanted to stop in, give you a little bit of an update. I'm sure everybody's well aware of what's going on in the market with interest rates and so forth, but I thought I could share with you a little bit of our insight as to where we see things going, particularly over the next 6 to 18 months, and how that is going to affect the performance of your portfolio, as well as some things that might be coming in the future, next, as I said, 6 to 18 months. So everybody get the presentation? Has anybody had a chance to look through? Did anybody have any questions before I get started?
Just interesting spread on the dot plots.
Yes, and the dot plot is from before the June meeting. They only update that quarterly. So that is probably going to be revised substantially the next time they do that. So not really going to go through all of the statement highlights from the Fed. You can read them for yourself. Generally speaking, you know, it's very favorable from an economic standpoint, but from a market standpoint, there's a little more reluctance to keep things as the status quo. They're trying to take action from a standpoint of responding to not only the demands of the president, but from what the market sees and what they see not only in the domestic, but in the global economy. So we just talked about the dot plot here. So the little red dot is the consensus of the polling. And what that means for you, for municipal investors, is that it's very likely, based on the information that we're seeing here, and again, as I said, that's going to probably be revised even lower. That we're probably going to be looking at lower interest rates for the next 12, 18, 24 months. There's still some uncertainty. Obviously, we don't have a crystal ball. We have no way of knowing exactly what those numbers are, but that's part of what we do is when we build a defensive strategy for you, is we're trying to protect the yield. We're trying to make sure that we're not sacrificing any liquidity. Obviously, we're following Public Act 20, but we're trying to make sure that we're locking in those rates for you as best we can. So page 4 is the rate cut path. The second rate cut has been pretty consistently predicted to be in September for the last few months. From the beginning of the year, they were talking about a June or July cut and then another September cut, but you'll notice that the projected 50-50 rate cut, which is they weren't sure 50-50 one way or another. Originally it was in December, now it's actually moved up to October. So there may indeed be a fourth rate cut yet this year based on what we're seeing here from market indications. U.S. labor market, that's one of the indicators that we use that gives us some insight into what the Fed is thinking, because that's one of their primary indicators. They use it to gauge the strength of the U.S. economy. They have a mandate for full employment and stable prices. And so with respect to non-farm payroll versus national employment, anybody who's tried to fill a position in the last 6 months for labor can tell you how tough it is out there, and that's due to the booming economy. And you've got payroll that's also kind of been steadily rising as well. National unemployment has been going down. The next slide, the price inflation and wage pressure, those two slides kind of go hand in hand with respect to unemployment and non-farm payroll, as well as wages and hourly earnings. So the blue line, the personal consumption expenditures, that's their fancy way of saying inflation. The Fed's target is 2%, and as you can see, we're pretty much below that and have been for some time. So there isn't a lot of inflation out there in the U.S. economy. And as well, hourly earnings have been steadily increasing over the last 4 to 5 years. So from an economic standpoint, it's very robust. The economy is doing great.
What is the Y over Y?
I'm sorry?
What does YOY stand for? Year over year? or-
Yes.
Okay.
Year over year.
Thank you. Just wanted to adjust that.
So the next page, if I'm going too fast, anybody have any questions, please jump in. So a lot of people talk about tariffs. They hear a lot about it on the news. They wonder what, if any, effect it'll actually have on the economy, have on the marketplace. This is just a slide that shows the actual cost of the tariffs enacted so far is very minuscule. It's less than $50 billion compared to our national GDP of $20 trillion. So in spite of all the hype that you're hearing about all the dangers of the tariffs and how much trouble it could get us into, so far from an economic and a market standpoint, it's had very little effect. The second slide is the second graph is the cost of the fiscal stimulus. That's just there as a comparative to show you that we have not yet even eaten up the entire benefit of that, and that's the tax cuts from first 2 years of the Trump administration. So the benefit was $124 billion. The cost of the tariffs only $50 billion. We haven't even eaten all the way into that benefit yet. So in spite of what you may be hearing in the news, in spite of the fear mongering from a standpoint of that tariffs are doing terrible things to the economy, the data doesn't indicate that. As a matter of fact, I read a study earlier today that said that if we put a 25% tariff on all Chinese goods that we imported, it would essentially wipe out the last 40 years of growth that they've had. So from the standpoint, you hear trade war and all, the tariffs and everything, it's actually much worse potentially for the Chinese than it is for us. So that's why the market doesn't put a lot of stock into what the media is talking about with respect to the potential of the implementation of those tariffs and what the danger that they may lead to.
Go ahead.
But doesn't every time that they put a tariff on, the stock market drops another 1,000? They did the last time.
Then it recovers.
And that was the time before.
Yeah. So
the stock market does react.
Yeah.
Correct?
Well, and there's a difference between the stock market and GDP. GDP is macro, and the stock market is on a day-to-day basis. It's more of a reactionary than a big picture, which is what you have to look at for GDP.
Your statement was like that the stocks do not react, but the fear mongering does the opposite of that. I don't want to say the opposite, but the fact of the matter is the stock market does react.
I apologize. I'm a fixed income guy. When I say market, I mean the bond side.
Okay.
We don't spend a lot of time on the fixed income shops on the stock market. You're entirely correct. There is reactionary movement in the stock market when these things happen.
Thank you.
I apologize.
No problem.
For a clarification point, the $50 billion impact on GDP, does that include the $16 billion for farm aid, or is it just here's how the economy has shrunk?
That is What our economists tell me is that that is everything that's been enacted so far, but it does not include that 300 million scheduled for September 1st.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
Yep.
Okay. So this next page, global bond yields, that is just kind of a snapshot of where yields are across the board in industrialized nations. One of the things to take note of is that negative yields abroad are actually driving capital into the United States because debt is so much cheaper, keeps our rates low, it's helping contribute to the robustness of the economy. So that's just kind of a summary of what we see in the market and what we see from an economic standpoint. Summarizing, as I said before, we're basically looking at lower short-term yields. When I say short-term, I mean 0 to 5 years, which is where we operate our investment strategies within. Over the next, could be 6, could be 12, could be 18 months, might be as much as 2 years. So what we're doing in response to that, we're building more defensive strategies. We are putting money out longer. When we first started working with you, the original strategy, I believe, was we were putting 70% short-term and only a little bit out longer. And that was because a year ago, we had great yields and it looked like everything was going to continue to go up and short-term yields were great. Well, ever since the December Fed meeting of last year, things have changed almost 180 degrees. And so now we're having to enact a more defensive strategy. So the first portfolio review is for your operating funds portfolio. We are down at about 20 basis points from where we were in January. And we have had to take out about what, million one over the course of the last 6 to 7 months. And that is, both of those things are what are contributing to that projection that I've run there for 42.8 over the next year. But Ray tells me, we spoke before the meeting, and we're going to be putting those back, most of those funds.
A large part of it.
Okay, and that'll get the number right back up again. We'll be right back up into the 50,000 a year range. Sure. So, and if I could bring your attention to
And just
the fact
since
that-
we have a
Sorry.
large public here, we're talking about our portfolio investments, we made a change to use better strategy and cautiously investing the money. If we hadn't taken the portfolio with your guidance, we would have been more in a third of that, right? Range?
Correct.
14,000 in interest rather than 40,000 or 50,000.
Especially in light of what's been going on with short-term interest rates over the last 6 to 7 months. Cash positions and money market funds have gone down considerably more than securities in the 3 to 5 year range.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions about the operating funds portfolio review? And then the second slide is what we are in the process of wrapping up the project funds. There's about $1 million left. A good portion of that is in money market. We're still in the height of the construction season, so it just makes sense, especially in light of the fact that those money market funds are still putting a decent rate. They're down lower than they were 6 months ago, but they're still a good rate. So in a construction season, it just makes sense to leave funds a little bit more liquid. And based on the projections that we have for the next 6 months or so, the next 3 months or so, we're still on track to earn about another $14,000 before all those funds are expended.
Great. Marie, you're happy with what's going on?
Yes.
Okay. Questions for Mike?
Very clear.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you for your good work and your report.
Thank you very much for having me out.
Appreciate it very much.
See you again. Thanks.
Okay, we're down to item E, which is approval of the agenda. I don't believe there's any additional information on the table today, so. Second. Moved by Fisher, second by Michelle. Thank you both. Any discussion needed? All those in favor of approving the agenda, signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Paul's other one.
Yeah, we'll do 6-0 if Paul got stepped down. Okay, so we have a public hearing this evening. Item F on the agenda. It is a public hearing to hear comments on a proposed tax exemption ordinance for Hilltop View Apartments. So I will open the public hearing, and then if you have a comment to make about the proposed ordinance, please raise your hand. I'll recognize you. Come on up to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and then you can say what you have to say, and then we'll go like that until there's no other comments, and then we'll close the public hearing. So it's 7:14?
15.
7:15, so I'll open the public hearing officially at 7:15. Are there members in the room that would like to speak? Okay, we'll go in the front row, please.
Hi, thank you. I'm Wendy Cardy-Saxon. I'm with Avalon Housing. I live at 2926 Marshall Street in Ann Arbor. I'm the Director of Real Estate Development at Avalon, and I really appreciate the opportunity to come tonight for consideration of the tax exemption or pilot payment in lieu of taxes for the Hilltop View Apartments. We continue to be extremely excited about the prospect of developing Hilltop View, and are pleased we now have a name. I think the last time we were here discussing it was just the address, so we're quite excited about that. And to continue and expand our partnership with Faith in Action. We've already had a successful development with, and now continuing with services, and for the expansion of having a food pantry there as a permanent place. In addition to the food pantry and community center, we'll have 24 units, 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. There are 6 one-bedrooms. All of those will be for veterans through the VA supportive housing program and funding. The other 2 and 3 bedroom units, so we're anticipating families. Half of those supportive housing, half of those just straight affordable with a set rent. And with a pilot with the tax exemption, it really is key to ensuring the long-term stability of our development and knowing our operating costs will be secure, and also really allowing us to have a rent structure that builds in that long-term affordability of rents. We are also submitting our site plan and zoning different times, so you'll be seeing us coming back before the Planning Commission and hopefully soon to council with those. And we're here tonight available to answer any questions that you might like. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Okay, please. Good evening.
Good evening.
Hi.
My name is Jamie Griffin. I was here just a couple of weeks ago. I live at 463 Preston Circle. I'm here on behalf of myself and the now 100 other people who have signed the petition urging the Dexter City Council to reconsider the need for and placement of the supportive housing component of the proposed Avalon housing development at 7651 Dan Hurley Road. In response to my last statement to council made on July 22nd, representatives from the city of Dexter, Avalon Housing, Faith in Action, and Washtenaw County have compiled a response and associated documentation found in tonight's meeting packet, and I want to thank everyone for the time and effort it took to prepare and organize this documentation. As Wendy just mentioned, as currently proposed, the development will consist of 24 units, 15 of which have been designated as supportive. Note that this is an increase from the 12 units designated as supportive at the time of the open house on July 16th. 6 of the 15 supportive units have been reserved for veterans, leaving 9 supportive units for non-veterans. The remaining 9 non-supportive units are characterized as more general affordable housing. From the beginning, and as stated in the petition, our concerns have focused on the need for and placement of the first 12 and now 15 supportive units. As this is a public hearing regarding the establishment of a payment in lieu of taxes or pilot arrangement between the City of Dexter and Avalon Housing, I have structured my statement around the following excerpt from the preamble to the ordinance. Quote, "It is further acknowledged that such housing for low-income persons and families is needed in the community. And as the City of Dexter will be benefited and improved by such housing, the encouragement of the same by providing real estate tax exemption for such housing is a valid public purpose." Notably, this excerpt characterizes exactly the concerns we have about the supportive housing component of the proposed development. As I described next, there is no evidence that such housing for low-income persons and families is needed in the community. Conversely, there is in fact evidence that the development might not benefit or improve the City of Dexter. Is there a need for affordable housing in Dexter? Yes. That has been made abundantly clear in the statements made by representatives from Faith in Action. Is there a need for the provision of supportive services to those living in affordable housing? Again, yes. However, contrary to what it says in the preamble to the ordinance under consideration tonight, the need for supportive housing in Dexter has not been established. According to a representative from Washtenaw County, there are 38 families consisting of 137 people eligible for supportive housing in Washtenaw County. A representative from Faith in Action could not confirm how many, if any, of these 38 families, either whole or in part, are in Dexter, and an identical follow-up question to the county has not yet been answered. Over the past 2.5 months, I have posed this fundamental question multiple times to multiple different people from multiple different agencies and have still not received an answer. Perhaps those involved have lacked the motivation to answer this question because it is unfortunately irrelevant to their decision-making. As it turns out, the only reason that 15 units have been designated as supported is because that is the requirement of the specific funding mechanism used by Avalon for this development, not because there is a need in Dexter for 15 supported units. Based on this evidence, then, we can only conclude that none of the 38 families eligible for supportive housing in Washtenaw County live in or have ties to Dexter. If the proposed development were to be occupied tomorrow, 9 of those families would be placed in the units designated as supported. That means Dexter would be meeting almost 25% of the county's need for supportive housing. However, per the meeting packet, the 48130 zip code makes up less than 4% of the county's households, and the city of Dexter makes up only 1% of the county's households. Therefore, what began as a desire for Faith in Action to find a permanent location for its satellite food pantry in Dexter, currently open for just 7 hours a week, has turned into a real estate development that requires the city of Dexter to disproportionately meet the county's supportive housing needs. There are other funding mechanisms that would enable Avalon or some other real estate developer to build a permanent food pantry for Faith in Action and the more general affordable housing units that are actually needed by those living in Dexter. As I said in my last statement, if the City Council's decision to sign the purchase agreement was motivated by a desire to help address the county's broader need for supportive housing, rather than a specific need in Dexter, then they should be transparent about that and justify this decision that comes at the cost of being able to serve the already demonstrated affordable housing needs in the city, and at the potential cost of placing school children in harm's way. Which brings me to the second part of the excerpt from the preamble that states, quote, "As the city of Dexter will be benefited and improved by such housing." There is in fact evidence that the development might not benefit or improve the city of Dexter. Our initial concerns about the proximity of the development to the schools were informed by 2 publicly available resident success stories. These stories described persistent and prolonged alcohol use despite access to supportive services that resulted in driving drunk and passing out in public. Many were not persuaded by a sample size of 2, so I presented more general evidence about behaviors associated with living in supportive housing and the impact those behaviors can have on others. In response to these concerns, as documented in the meeting packet, a representative from Avalon indicated that the housing first approach they follow does not mean, quote, anything goes, and that, quote, there are not subsequent safety issues correlated with their tenant community and their proximity to schools. Further, a representative from Faith in Action stated that, quote, destructive behavior to sell for others will not go unaddressed, and that, quote, criminal and antisocial behavior is not tolerated and will be forcefully addressed. They further acknowledge that problems will arise from time to time, but they have promised to, quote, respond in a prompt manner, thoughtfully and fairly. Although we could continue to defer to representatives from organizations with a vested interest in the closing of this deal, due diligence actually requires that we consider independent and objective facts. To better understand the behaviors that might be expected to occur at the proposed development, directly across the street from the schools, across from the playground where children commonly can be seen playing alongside the fence, and at sidewalks where children walk to and from school, let's review recent activity at a sample of Avalon properties. Consider the example of Caraway Apartments on Ann Arbor's north side. This development was newly built in 2005 and consists of 24 2- and 3-bedroom units with an on-site community center, not unlike the development proposed tonight. Per publicly available crime mapping data, since this past February, the furthest date for which these data are available, there have been 10 reported crimes there. 6 assaults, 1 aggravated felony assault, 1 damage to private property, and 1 fraud. Consider the example of Pauline Apartments in central Ann Arbor. This development was the demolition and rebuilding of a former affordable housing complex completed in late 2013. It consists of 32 units, including 1, 2, and 3-bedroom units. Again, per publicly available crime mapping data, since this past February, there have been 7 reported crimes there. 3 assaults, 1 aggravated felony assault with a gun, 1 larceny, 1 sex crime, and 1 damage to private property. Now contrast that with Walkabout Creek Apartments in Dexter, just down the street from the proposed Avalon development. This property is managed by KMG Prestige and does not have any supported units. Again, per publicly available crime mapping data, since this past February, there have been 0 reported crimes there. In fact, during that period of time, to get up to even 9 reported crimes, you have to extend to all the properties within a half-mile radius of 7651 Danhoe Road. To be fair, publicly available crime mapping data are incomplete. Those data only pertain to actual crimes and do not reflect general police activity or the associated incident reports. As an example, per publicly available crime mapping data since this past February, there were no reported crimes at the Sharon Ann Apartments in Chelsea, the first partnership between Avalon and Faith in Action. However, detailed incident reports obtained through a Freedom of Information Act request indicate that there have been 6 incidents since February, and 20 incidents since the renovated complex was unveiled in June 2018. These incidents range from the nuisance 911 hang-up call to the more concerning situation of a resident passed out in the parking lot, and include noise complaints and disputes among residents. Do we think that residents of the proposed development are going to directly target school children walking to or from school or while on the playground? No. We have never expressed that concern and agree that is unlikely. However, is it possible that children walking to or from school or on the playground might happen upon or witness a resident pass out on the sidewalk, a drunken argument in the parking lot, or perhaps something worse that warrants police intervention? Yes, as demonstrated by the evidence. Is it also possible that children might be exposed to these incidents in other parts of the city? Yes. But as the evidence indicates, there is a disproportionate likelihood that this sort of activity will occur at a development of this nature. Thus, the location of the proposed development is imprudent, and we are urging you to reconsider it. In short, the proposed development requires the City of Dexter to disproportionately serve a county-level need, and in a way that places children at a disproportionate risk. Were resources unlimited, certainly all needs, and for that matter, all wants would be met. As those in Dexter paying any attention to the years-long conversation about the fire station and other city facilities know, unfortunately, resources here in Dexter are not unlimited. Therefore, a key purpose of public policy and a key role of the City Council is to determine how to best allocate those resources. In this case, as in nearly all others, reasonable people can disagree. One person might think that asking Dexter to disproportionately serve a need in Washtenaw County is a valid use of Dexter's limited resources. Another might disagree. One might think that the best and most prudent place in all of Washtenaw County for this development is directly across the street from the elementary schools and their playground, and that the potential risk for exposure and harm to children walking to and from school or in the school playground is minimal. Another might disagree. In fact, in this case, at least 101 others disagree. The Dexter City Council has an opportunity tonight to reflect on the weight of this information and our associated concerns and reconsider the need for and location of this development. We are urging you to do so. At the very least, if you continue to move forward with this development in light of all of the information we have brought to bear on this conversation over the past 2.5 months, the language in the ordinance needs to be clarified. To say that, quote, such housing for low-income persons and families is needed in the community lacks the specificity necessary to be an accurate characterization of Dexter's housing needs. There is a difference between affordable housing and supportive housing and the requirements for placement in them, and whether and to what extent either housing type meets a need in Dexter. That no public statement made by the city, including this ordinance, makes this distinction is concerning. Either the City Council does not understand what the distinction is and how it relates to Dexter's housing needs, or they are intentionally being dishonest. Either is a problem. Therefore, the ordinance and any further communication about this development need to clearly and accurately make the distinction between the proposed distribution of housing types and how it relates to a need in Dexter. Similarly, if the Dexter City Council thinks it is a, quote, valid public purpose for Dexter to take on a disproportionate county-level need, and that by doing so the City of Dexter will be benefited and improved, then that needs to be clearly articulated in the ordinance and justified in any further communication about this development. Lastly, if the Dexter City Council thinks it is a, quote, valid public purpose to expose school children to a disproportionate risk, and that by doing so the City of Dexter will be benefited and improved, then that needs to be clearly articulated in the ordinance and justified in any further communication about this development. The Dexter City Council was elected by the residents of Dexter to represent the residents of Dexter. The primary responsibility and obligation of the council, therefore, is to the residents of Dexter. We deserve a council that, when making any decision, considers all the evidence and is honest, accurate, and transparent in its communication about whatever decision it makes. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Can you leave a copy of that? Thank you. Thank you, Jamie. Please.
Good evening. My name is Sarah Shugart, and I live at 9866 Heron Creek Drive. I'm in Dexter Township. I feel like I'm a resident of this community. My daughter has attended the school system since she started with Sue Stalker at UCSC, and she's now getting ready to start 7th grade. And so I just wanted to give you my thoughts, which are my thoughts as a resident of this community and also as someone who's been working for Faith in Action for the last 8 years. Faith in Action started more than 30 years ago, and during that time has evolved to become a vital part of the lives of many adults and families who struggle to live in Western Washtenaw County. Although Faith in Action can help in the short term with housing needs, such as assistance with rent or mortgage, or even putting people up in the local hotel for a night or two, we have seen an increasing need for affordable housing. We have watched our clients, especially in Dexter, leave the immediate area as the rents in our communities continue to increase. It has been a dream, a goal of Faith in Action for many years to determine what we could do to help alleviate this problem. When the Sharon Ann Apartments came up for sale, the idea of doing an affordable housing project with Avalon Housing started to move from a dream into a reality. Faith in Action took a leap of faith. We were a small 3-person operation, and we knew that we might fail in this endeavor with Avalon. But we knew this would also have an important impact on our mission, which is providing essential supports to alleviate the effects of hunger and poverty for those in the Dexter, Chelsea, and surrounding areas. We sought out the help of another Washtenaw community nonprofit, Avalon Housing, which started in 1992. Their mission is to build healthy, safe, and inclusive supportive housing communities as a long-term solution to homelessness. Like Faith in Action, Avalon Housing is a nonprofit whose primary goal is to serve people, to make an impact in the lives of others living in our county. With their help and the support of the businesses, churches, and the city of Chelsea, Sharon Ann Apartments were renovated and opened their doors in June of 2017 as an affordable and supportive housing building. Because of this success, our initial desire to find a permanent home for our Dexter food pantry has evolved to an affordable housing project with Avalon. This project, as you know, will include an on-site food pantry, which will serve Hilltop View residents as well as others in the Dexter area. I understand that people want data to help inform their opinions and decisions about the homeless, about folks they classify as poor, the rates of mental illness, and issues with substance abuse. Today, I'm asking you to also consider the other side of the data, that there is a name and a face and an opportunity to change the path of everyone that finally finds housing. Having Sharon Ann in Chelsea has meant a safe and affordable apartment for some of those that Faith in Action serves. We know that Bob won't die alone in his truck where he lived for the past 8 years, using our shower and laundry facilities until he got his own apartment there. It means that Chris now has an opportunity to work on his GED and then perhaps realize his dream of working with cars. He can take these next steps because he has a place to live. It is the provided supported services, the key to Avalon developments, that will keep them housed and give them the support to move towards the next step in their lives. In addition, about half the residents in Sharon Ann work locally in the Chelsea community, helping to keep the vitality of the community's service and retail businesses. But there are still many people out there who come across our office with nowhere to go. Many have ties to Western Washtenaw County. Some of them just heard about us from somewhere. We do what we can, providing food, maybe diapers, a little money for gas, and occasionally putting someone up for a night at the Chelsea Comfort Inn. We often work with these folks to get them on the HAWK list, the Housing Alliance for Washtenaw County, which is the path to a place to live for anyone homeless in this county. But that wait can take months. Does Dexter need this type of facility, a supportive, affordable housing facility that will provide access to one of the best school systems in the county? Many small businesses and restaurants in town struggle to find employees. Without people in this community able to work in our local businesses, it will affect how these businesses can grow and thrive. This community has changed dramatically over the years. The median income in the school district is $104,000 annually, and the average price of a house in the school district is $331,000. Our desire to live in this community, those of us not originally from here, have pushed many longtime residents out. They are no longer able to afford to live here. Others that we know that we help are hanging on by a thread, trying to make it until their kids graduate from school. This housing project is our opportunity as a community to serve people, to invite some back to this area, to provide a way for them to experience what Dexter has to offer, a great school district, jobs they could walk to, and most importantly, a chance to start again with the stable base of a home. Plus, the support to help them navigate whatever challenges they may have or come their way. And for the families with children, an opportunity for their kids to find a path to success and to succeed beyond where their parents have made it. We have the opportunity to provide 6 homeless veterans a brand new start, to serve up to 9 families waiting on the HAWK list to be housed. Right now, there are 67 families with children on this list. The last person I helped get on this list was a mother with an 18-month-old. She tried to live with her sister's family who's from this area, but that opportunity ended. She is now one of those 67 families waiting. She was struggling against the circumstances that life had given her. Any of us born into those same situations would have most likely struggled in the same way. At Faith in Action, we know that we can't always provide what everybody needs, and we continue to evolve to help as many people as we can. This project is our next step in that endeavor. I would like to thank this council for working with Faith in Action and with Avalon to help make this dream a reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Off the door, there's another hand or two over here, please. Welcome.
Good evening. I'm Dave Lutton, and I'm not a Dexter resident, but I've lived in the Dexter School District for 38 years. My wife Louise and I raised two sons. They did K-12 at Dexter, and Louise taught 20 years in the Dexter school system. A few years ago, I was on the committee that helped launch the Dexter Community Fund, which is getting going and actively raising money for the community. I want to commend council because my understanding is that you have been proactive in trying to look at the affordable housing question and be active in making something happen. I was 20 years the president and owner of the Reinhardt real estate firm. And I can tell you that there is an affordable housing crisis in this county, not only in homes and condominiums for sale, but also in rental properties. And what has happened since the Great Recession has been a steady upward tick, well ahead of inflation in rents and home prices. That has abated some in the last 12 months, but it is still very expensive to live in the greater Ann Arbor area and western Washtenaw County. In Avalon, we have an organization that is now nationally acclaimed in its 25 to 30-year history. They've accomplished so much, and they've done it with steady growth and financial responsibility. Avalon's properties are often the best looking property on the block, wherever they are located. They are scattered throughout the city of Ann Arbor, and as mentioned now, there's one in Chelsea. There is a need. I am a 15-year member of the Washtenaw Housing Alliance Board. That is an organization of 30 nonprofits, all working to end homelessness in Washtenaw County. We've made some terrific strides over the last 15 years, but we haven't licked homelessness. We're getting close on veterans homelessness. A real system has been set up, and we're very close to being accredited by HUD as having ended veterans homelessness. That doesn't mean there won't be a new vet homeless next week, but we now have mechanisms in place as prescribed by HUD to quickly rehouse veterans. So we've made a lot of progress. Previous speaker talked about 38 families in the county being eligible for supportive services. I've never heard anything resembling that statistic in my 15 years on the Housing Alliance Board. And we have on that board the city manager of Ann Arbor and other public officials. The county executive is on that board. So that's a new one on me, and I can only think that Avalon, who is currently housing more than 700 residents in Washtenaw County, and providing services to many, many more than 38 families. I quarrel with that statistic that was offered. You have a great partnership here. Avalon, as I say, is best in class at what they do. And Faith in Action is such a strong influence in Dexter and Chelsea. And the fact now that they've got a year and a half or almost 2 years under their belt working together, this is a great opportunity. And so I urge you to see this project through to the end. I guess I'll close by saying that if you, that most of us in this room are very fortunate, and we are not desperate for affordable housing, and we don't worry about where meals are coming from. But there are a lot of people in this county who have those kinds of problems, and what has been demonstrated by so many studies is that if you take care of housing people, then you can begin to improve the rest of their lives and meet the challenges that they're facing. as a societal question, this affects public health. People in housing are healthier than those who are living on the edge or outside of housing. People in housing are employable and dependable in ways that people on the edge simply can't be. Broadly for society, you have fewer emergency room visits, you have fewer jail stays when people are stably housed. And then you get into the subject of kids, and that was mentioned. We've got a lot to brag about in Dexter community, a fine school system, but if you are one of those families that's almost homeless or actually homeless, education for children becomes a much harder situation, and the failure rate of those kids going forward, this is how the system becomes cyclical and problems just reoccur and reoccur. So I strongly urge you to see this project through. You've got great nonprofit partners involved, and I know that there is need for this facility in the Dexter School District. There's no question in my mind that there's a need, and like all of Avalon's projects, there will be waiting lists in this community. Thanks for listening.
Yes, please. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Roxanne Keating, and I live in Walkabout Creek, 7110 Walkabout Creek. And I have a 13-year-old daughter who's a straight-A student. She's got a black belt in karate. She plays viola and piano. She's got a debate around 16. And I'm a single mom. So every year I have to ask the question, are we going to be able to stay in Dexter? So I am not one of the people that makes $100,000. It's important to me to be able to stay here until she graduates. So I just want you guys to hear the other side of the people that don't know. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Good evening.
Oh, I'm Joshua Zisler of the 13351 Island Lake Road, and I'm here to address the veteran topic. And being a veteran myself, it's true that to get in supportive housing, most veterans suffer from mental illness or drug addiction, usually a mixture of two. And I don't see that as a problem that Dexter has. And so my concern is that this is a solution looking for a problem. And then that is what this solution will do, is bring about that problem. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you. Did I miss a hand?
Right back there. Hi, I'm Phil Mekas, 7203 Ulrich, as most of you already know. As both a homeowner and a business owner here in town, I have to reiterate comments from prior meetings, not specifically about this topic, but about others. The choices that the city council is making to increase taxes in other ways, which then makes housing more unaffordable in town, and then also create a tax exempt project here. I just really think that you ought to take a step back and get a bigger picture in a more comprehensive plan for this stuff, rather than on one hand have these projects that are tax exempt, and on the other hand start increasing taxes on all the residents, even those residents that already are at the brink of not being able to afford their taxes or their home payments or whatever it happens to be. You can't look at them differently, and I wish that the city council would do that as one big fell swoop rather than looking at each item individually. Thanks.
Thank you, Phil. Yes, sir.
My name is Dick Ulrich. I don't live in town, but this is my town, down my court. An old friend of mine could have used something like this. His name was Stan Chapman. Anybody that's been here for 40 years knows him. He was a drunk. He was in AA. He was a wonderful man. He lived out on Ann Arbor Road when he died. He could have used this. Thank you.
Thank you for coming, Dick. Yes, please.
Hi, Jessica Cicollini, 3517 Noble Drive. I just wanted to take a moment and let you know my thoughts on Avalon housing and why they shouldn't be tax exempt. Avalon housing needs public transportation and walkability. There are no walkable jobs. I don't know what they would do, or public transportation. All we have is the wave, but I have only seen one bus. There isn't a ton of public transportation, so I don't know how they would get from jobs. So that was my question. And then putting it across from an elementary school, I probably wouldn't put kids' lives in danger when you're putting Avalon housing across from there. That just seems like you're going to have issues. If they end up being here, at least have pay the taxes and we can get more emergency services and buses so they can, have walkable, go to jobs and things like that. That's really all that I have to say.
Thank you for your comments, Bethany. Other hands for the public hearing? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing then on the proposed tax exemption ordinance for Hilltop View Apartments at
7:46.
Thank you, 7:46. We opened at 7:15, we closed at 7:46. Okay. As is our tradition with public hearings, there's a consideration item that we would ask council if they would like to consider at this time. It's proposed on the agenda. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Support. Moved by Michelle's, second by Cousins. Thank you both. Discussion. Courtney, would you like to lead us through what you put together here?
The only thing I would mention just off the top of my head is that one thing to keep in mind is that the Fair Housing Act absolutely would not permit us to build a development and say only Dexter residents can move in here. And Avalon and Faith and Action help me out with that, but that is not possible. So under no circumstance would we be able to say, we're going to build this affordable housing, but only people in the 48130 zip code are allowed to be eligible for it. It has to be opened up. But the county, when they're placing people, knows that you're going to be more successful in the community that you're already in. So it doesn't do a lot of good to move people, vastly away from their support networks when they're filling these vacancies. So while, yeah, we can't say, it would be illegal for us to say we're going to fill this with Dexter people, we'll be able, Faith and Action, Avalon will be able to make sure that, the clients at Faith and Action are on the list, that they know about the paperwork, that, they're doing that. But I don't want anyone to have the idea that we could be doing this and just saying it's for Dexter residents. It doesn't work that way with federal money. So, and
well, you also don't have a list by names and pre-sort that thing.
Right. I mean, they have a list, and the county judges, makes the determination from that list, I assume, based on greatest need, those sorts of things, and they're going to fill it. But yeah, it's not possible to do that. So there's information. The ordinance is in here. As I said, it was I used the MISHDA draft language is also basically what was passed in Chelsea. And then there's an attachment from my report, Faith and Action Avalon staff put together additional to try to answer some of the questions that have been raised. There's also reference material to other sources, so hopefully council found that helpful.
Yeah, for those of you in the audience that did not see tonight's packet necessarily, there is over 50 pages of information that Courtney and with the help from Faith and Action Avalon have put together in response to some questions that were raised under previous comments that we heard on this topic. So we are trying our best to get the information out there, to share what we know. There's nothing being hidden here, so all the stuff you heard earlier, I take a little bit of exception to the non-transparent comment because that isn't this body. We're trying our best to put it out there, and it's not about us, but since it was sort of suggested that's the case, I'm going to rebut that a little bit. If anybody has questions on those statistics or where they came from, you know, we're trying to do this the right way. Please also understand that this is a potential project. This is not approval of the project, but this application that, as I understand, Avalon is going to be making for the money, the funding source. Things like having, you know, control of the property, having an approved site plan, having an ordinance in place, all these things help them score better. Okay, they help them score better, and because, at least I believe that this is needed in the community, and I believe this council believes that too. I'll let them follow me here. You know, we are trying to go through this process and are willing to entertain these other things. Some people might say, well, why don't you just wait till the end and put the ordinance in place? Well, having the ordinance in place up front makes their application in this effort stronger. So that's maybe a misunderstood timing part of this. So I wanted to cover that. Paul, you had your hand up, so I'll let you
Paul Cousin, I am the representative from this city council to the WAVE, which is the Washington Area Value Express. We service Dexter and Chelsea. I can tell you that we have one of the top type of transportation systems that is in Washtenaw County, Western Washtenaw County. We're associated with the AATA and have connections with that organization as well. I give you a personal example. I have an apartment above my garage. I've had a couple that lived in it, a man and wife, for about 2.5 years now. When they got here from northern Michigan, they had a car. That car died on them. So they rely on the WAVE bus every time they have to have transportation. 5 days a week for employment and 2 days a week when they want to go into Ann Arbor, or actually sometimes it's 6 days a week when they have employment. They leave my house at about, depending on their schedule, between 6 and 7 o'clock. They catch the bus by the senior center on Dexter Ann Arbor Road. One of them is employed on Jackson Avenue, the other one is employed in the city of Ann Arbor. They come back at approximately 4:30 to 5:30, depending on their schedule, every day. And they will tell you that if it wasn't for the public transportation that they have, they would not be able to live here and to be employed. They need that public transportation. It proves that where they live in Dexter gives them the opportunity to work in various places. And it would be the same thing there. That wave transportation will go directly down Dan Way Road and pick up people, okay?
But there was already a stop on Dan Way.
And there was a stop, yes, there was a stop on Dan Way. So this idea that we don't have transportation in Western Washtenaw, and that's just one part of what we do as it relates to the public transportation. We have other methods for transporting people in Washtenaw County as well. So I just want to let you know that opportunity there is available to the citizens of Dexter, whether you live in the housing complex here or that you live anywhere in the city, okay?
Thank you, Paul. Other council member comments? Okay, if there's none at this time, then I'll call the vote to approve the tax exemption ordinance.
Cousins?
Yes.
Bell?
Yes.
Knight?
Yes.
Michelle's?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Fisher?
Yes.
Keo?
Yes. Motion carries. I'd like to thank everybody who took the time to come and provide the comment. It is important that we do listen to what your thoughts are, so thank you for that. Let's see, we are down to non-arranged participation. This is an item on the agenda, a spot on the agenda where you can speak on any topic. You have up to 5 minutes. Similar protocol to what we just did. Please raise your hand and I'll call you in. Step forward to the podium. Yes. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Abby Briggs. I am the current board president of Dexter Community Players. I came here tonight to let you know a little bit about our organization. We've been providing quality theater and arts opportunities to the Dexter area since 1981. Our home is currently the building you're currently sitting in. If you've been to a DCP show, you've walked right over to that beautiful black box theater right on the other side of the wall. So as you are all likely aware, Dexter Schools are in the process of selling our home. You know, one of the things that we really strive as an organization is to make our community members of all calibers able to participate in the arts, whether that be acting, singing, light, sound, painting, you know, as a real outlet for our community. It's not just coming to see a show, it's being able to participate in the arts in your community. And we try our best to do this in a very affordable manner. Participation fees for our shows are anywhere between $75 to $100 for a family. Other organizations charge anywhere between $300 to $750 for a participation fee for a child or an adult to be in a show. We do 4 shows annually. 3 of them are usually right over there, and 1 of them is over at Columbus Hall. If you've ever come to see one of our dinner theater productions, that's where that's held. Like I said, our average participation in any show is approximately 50 people, between artists, technicians, set painters, you know, anybody who likes to participate in the arts. We also participate in numerous community activities and support local businesses. We participate at Dexter Days, Apple Days, annual parades, you know, volunteering at schools for STEM night and all sorts of arts activities. You know, we also support local businesses through both, you know, hosting meetings regularly at our local businesses, as well as, you know, the community involvement in these shows. We currently bring about 2,000 people a year in to see our shows, which all, you know, go and have dinner and spend the evening in Dexter. You know, so what are we gonna do now? So if Copeland goes away, what are we gonna do? You know, there are a few alternate theaters out there. We could go rent Jane Tesh in Pinckney. We could go rent the Linda Mendelson Theater in Ann Arbor. But we are committed to being Dexter community players. There is a community theater in Ann Arbor. There is a community theater in Pinckney. So this is, you know, where our home is and where we'd like to stay. You know, there are a couple other theaters, spaces in town. There's one at the high school, also known as the Center for the Performing Arts. Unfortunately, Dexter Schools pretty much eats up all the time of that theater all year long. Between drama, choir, band performances. There's the Encore, but unfortunately they do not rent their space out to non-Encore theater productions. So why don't we just buy a new space, right? We could go, sure, we could probably go, I don't know, the Red Line Athletics just closed down doors, so I could probably go in and rent that space if I wanted to, right? Well, unfortunately, that's not in the budget for DCP. Part of our structure is keeping costs affordable for the community. We bring in approximately, between participation fees and ticket sales, about $10,000 per show, and $7,000 of that goes out in rights, costumes, professional musicians, which you have to hire for shows, sets, advertising, all that kind of stuff, which leaves us about $3,000 per show for a space. I did look into one of the spaces over in that area. That was one of the smaller spaces, and the rent per month is $2,000, and that was for a nonprofit. So, as you can see, 4 shows a month, if you're having to pay rent, do the math. It's a lot more than a community theater can afford. So, you know, we are devoted to stay in the Dexter area. You know, what we're asking the city council to do is, you know, to consider the importance of community theater in your town. You know, it makes Dexter what Dexter is. It makes, you know, the people in Dexter happy and, you know, when they're participating in the arts. So, you know, we hope that we don't have to go outside of Dexter to continue. We hope we don't have to shut our doors. So, you know, if the city council has any sort of, you know, impact in that or any sort of ideas for DCP, we are open. Anything you have to say? So, thank you.
Thank you, Abby. Thank you. Other members of the public that would like to speak tonight? Yes, Jack.
The reason I came, I'm still from Delhi. The reason I came, you know, I always questioned whether this was a city or not until last Saturday. I don't know who in the world paid for the fireworks, but it was outstanding. You know, it was just very good. Now, another thing. I think this young man over here with a beard could help me. I think I talked to him. Border to Border Trail wants to put, is going to want to put Bell Road Bridge over, God, I had a stroke a couple years ago, and it's over the creek that goes.
Mill Creek.
Mill Creek. They're gonna want to put they're gonna want to put that bridge over there. When it all happens, it'll probably be 2 or 3 years down the road, but I'd like to see it honored. I'd like to see it honor the Girl and Boy Scouts of Dexter, past and future. And also like to see, like Jack Brigham and Bill Steptoe, and there's a lady that's been on the Girl Scout board, she's been working with the Girl Scouts for over 50 years. She deserves to have her name on the bridge too. I would really like to see that, and I know this is a long ways down the road, but that's my feelings. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hello, I'm Joseph McCarty. I live at 3214 Boulder Court. I wanted to talk a little bit about facilities. So Saturday night, I talked to a resident of the city who put it really concisely, and I thought it was really smart what that person said. And they said, whatever we do on facilities should be affordable and what we need. That was it. That was the criteria. Affordability and what was needed. And it made me think a lot about the real controversial issues over the last 10, 15, 20 years. I thought about the proposal to put the road through the park. There was a lot of people who said that was needed. We had to have that. Because of traffic in town, we had to do it. As it turns out, we didn't need to do it. Traffic still gets through town. It's a little bit worse now than it was then, but we didn't need it. The residents didn't want it. When we had the library election the first time, the library board said, we need it. We need to buy the green space out next to the high school. We need to buy an open land. We need to have one story. We need to have X amount of parking. And it's amazing how many of these things are so similar to the discussion we're having recently. And there's no place to put it in the downtown. There's just no place. We can't find it. We've been looking for years. We can't find it. So it went to an election, and the millage lost. The people knew what they needed. They knew what was affordable, and they knew what they wanted. So what happened? The library found a spot downtown. They put up 2 stories. Works good. It's what the community needed, and it passed. Didn't pass resoundingly. It passed 52 to 48. That was the percentage on that election. It was close. There was no opposition to that second ballot at all. For the fire station, the question is, what do we need and what can we afford? We already have what we need. Fire department does what it's supposed to do. The question is, what are we going to get if we build a new fire department? Getting better response times? Less people's houses are going to burn down? Less people are going to get impacted by this? Our insurance rates will go down? What is it that we're going to get out of this idea that we're going to spend $6+ million on this fire department? Is it really what we need? Or is what we need to refurbish what we already have to fix the deficiencies that we have right now? On top of that, one of the things that I learned in the last couple of weeks was I read the Sun-Times article about Copeland and that it was going to be sold to Encore for less than $1.1 million. I cannot think of a time, in all the time that I was on council, that we would have said, no, we'll pass on that. That's too much, it doesn't work. Actually, it's the exact opposite. It works perfectly. It would have, on day one, given us offices for the city. It would have ensured the senior center is here for in perpetuity. It would have given a home to the community theater for as long as they wanted to be there, and probably a bunch of other things. In fact, there's enough land out there, if you really wanted to, you could have probably sited a fire department out there on the Dexter and Amber Road. There's enough land there. I really hope that the reason that the city wasn't the purchaser for this property was because we didn't know or it wasn't made available to us. That's what I'm hoping. The cynic in me says this would have been competition for the proposal that's been put forward and is proposed right now for the map development property on Dexter and Arbor Road. I'm hoping against hope that that is not the situation, because that would simply be putting personal interest over the public gain and benefit, and that would work. So if there's any opportunity to end up to be here, if Encore can't close in another year when they're supposed to close, I hope that we'll consider this, even though it would mean that the offices wouldn't be down where the fire station is now if it moves out of there. This is an ideal location. It just doesn't make any sense that this would not have been at the very top of the list for facilities for the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments, Joe. Was there one other hand out there? For anyone that wants to speak on the non-arranged and spoken? Okay, thank you. We're down to item H, which is communications. Our two typical regular communications, our upcoming meeting list, and our signed calendar are in the packet. Are there any comments on either of those two communications? Seeing none, our first report tonight is from our Public Services Superintendent. Good evening, Dan.
Good evening, Sean. Good evening, Council.
Dan, before you jump into your report, yes, sir. 2 weeks ago, if you had come to the town hall meeting, I was going to wish you happy birthday in public. And now on that night, because it was the day, I was going to offer to sing. Okay, so happy belated birthday.
Probably not very much.
Okay.
In your packet, you have my 2-week report. I'd like to start, I have 3 updates on projects we got going on. The first one I'd like to start with is the Central Street project. We're about 50% done with the storm main being put in. We got about 80% the base in. It's not the grade yet. We replaced an 8-inch valve, gate valve, water valve on 4th and Central Street. Today they started removing asphalt from 5th and Central down towards the gazebo. They're probably going to have that completed by tomorrow, I would think. One of the things that we found on 4th Street was a sewer main that I did not know we had. If you're familiar where I live, the alley in between my house and Rich Haynes, there's actually a lead that runs up 130 feet toward Rich Haynes' house. And it's actually, there's a clean out that comes up that was 2.5, 3.5 feet below grade, a 6-inch. It
Comes
doesn't
up from Central, you're saying?
Yeah, it's coming towards Central Street, yeah, from my alley. So when we were made aware of that, we called Metro Sewer, we TV'd it, we looked at it. We've asked the contractor, OHM, to ask the contractor for a price to actually put a dead-end sewer main on it, or a sewer manhole, I should say. What we found when we televised it, Rich Haynes has been telling me for years that his sewer lead comes all the way out to the alley. Well, it doesn't. It comes out in his parking lot and goes to that. His sewer lead goes to that. And also across the street from there, on Central and 4th, that lead comes across. It wasn't damaged during the construction at all, but when you're doing underground, you find little surprises here and there. One thing it did do to the Central Street project is that was where they wanted to lay the storm sewer. So what it did is it pushed it out into the road 5 or 8 feet. So we've got some additional asphalt that we had to remove to get that storm in there. So we had water that was kind of in the center of the green belt there. We didn't know the sewer was there. That's where they wanted to lay the storm sewer, so we had to push it out. So we're working through that. We've had to lower 3 water service lines on Central Street between 4th and 3rd. I believe when we put them mains in, we let the contractor bore across the road for the service lead, so they actually didn't dig a trench. And what happened is they started creeping up on them, and at that time there was no way to know that. So we lowered 3 of them to keep them down. We lowered the road a little bit, but we're still going to have 5.5 feet of cover on the sewer, the water service lines and the mains there. We went down from Central Street at 4th and 5th, and we looked at all the service leads there. We've got a couple that we're going to exploratory dig, and OHM is going to change the grades a little bit on their project to assure that we've got enough cover so we don't have any frozen services, water services. This Wednesday, we're going to do a shutdown of the water main at Broad and 5th. We have to lower that so we can get our storm sewer from the kind of where the dentist office is. We're going across towards the railroad tracks. We're going to lower that water main. Actually, it's running down 5th Street. So we're going to go across the road by the dentist, across the road by the dentist, towards the railroad tracks, and then we're going to come back and tie into the 36-inch that's on the opposite side. That's where we get to lower the water main on Wednesday. That'll start at 9 a.m. and they should be done by 3 p.m.
Assistants have to boil water during that time?
Yeah, we handed out the shut-offs and the boil water advisory on that. Thank you, Paul. So that'll be Wednesday, Thursday for the lowering, and then they're going to start putting that 30-inch across, and then they're going to head back up 5th Street towards Central Friday and Saturday. So they'll be going through the parking lot of the dentist office there, which I've already talked to on several occasions about what our schedule is there. Is there any questions?
Go ahead, Bill.
Can you tell us anything more about the bomb threat that was received at the wastewater treatment plant?
One of our employees received an email on the bomb threat. I haven't heard anything more about that other than obviously we had the police there and they had bomb sniffing dogs, 2 of them that came down to make sure there wasn't any bombs inside.
Is there any way they can find who the threat came from?
Have you had any follow-up?
No, I mean, it's really hard for them to email because you can make it look like they came from all kinds of places. So it was like really poorly written. It it just said, your premises. So I mean, it was kind of vague, but.
All your base are belong to us.
Yeah, I mean, it was so it was, but it was enough that we wanted them to just come check it out.
Was it a personal email or?
It came
to the
to an
city?
employee's personal, or not personal email, to a city email.
The next update I have is Forest Street sidewalk. The last email, they're going to start grading, hopefully this coming Wednesday. I know with talking with OHM, the gas company hasn't misdug everything they need to, so they're going to try to help and try to get that done. So hopefully the grading will start on Wednesday.
As they were laying out the sidewalk in front of my place there, Patrick said that they thought they may put a catch basin there by my driveway, and I haven't heard anything. Do you know if that's happening or not?
I have not heard anything on it, but I'm
When the other guys were there looking, setting the stakes, I asked them the same question. They said they know nothing. Okay. I'd just like to know.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. The next update that I have is on the wastewater project. We started bypass pumping last week from the new Headworks building with a 6-inch lay flat hose to the primary clarifiers. With that done, we can go ahead and start with a demolition on the screw pump pit, the grit chamber, and the diversion chamber. All the screw pumps are gone now. And with the grit chamber being gone, it is a lot, it's gonna take a while to get used to because it's really quiet down there. You know?
We couldn't turn those into public art or something?
I'll tell you what, you still have a chance.
Sure.
All the
Still
rods
sitting
stick
there.
out right now that they gotta cut off.
The screws would look good.
Oh, I didn't even think about that, yeah. There you go.
Oh, we need art everywhere, so.
So they just about finished the grit chamber and the diversion chamber. They're not completely taking them out, they're gonna go below grade, and then they'll end up filling them up with topsoil and dirt. And then with the actual screw pumps, they've demolished where the screw pumps were hanging over. They're gonna cut off 2 or 3 feet on the sides, and then we're actually gonna use that for a new flow channel that goes to the primary clarifiers. And when we get rid of the bypass pumping, we'll have, you know, a line coming up, a 6-8 inch line coming up to hit that new concrete flow channel. It's pretty exciting. We're getting to the end, you know. So what I was really hoping, and me and Courtney talked at next council meeting that we'll have F&B.
The first council meeting.
The first council meeting, I should say, in September. We'll have F&B here for an update and cost summary of where we're at. But it's really shaping up down there. Any questions on that?
And we're still on budget? Good.
Any questions on my?
Extra $80,000 from the meter investments was helpful.
What's that?
The extra $80,000 from the meter investments, you know, meant we will use less reserves, so that was very helpful.
Very good project. Just got to go around a couple more times and we'll be done. Any questions on my written report?
Bill, please tell Kurt and everybody, I thought the town looked great for the extra days. Everything was very clean, well set up, so pass that along, please.
I will. I'll get back with you. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Dan. Next up is our Community Development Manager. Welcome, Michelle.
Good evening, Council. How are you this evening?
Good.
Oh, I'm really impressed. Thanks, Ed.
We've been practicing.
Pardon me?
We've been practicing.
Practicing, perfect. Okay. You have my 2-week report in front of you. Before I go into updates and questions, I'm sorry, specifics on it, does anybody have any questions?
Is there a alley somewhere that we haven't vacated somewhere in the past at some time that didn't get actually documented?
Yes. Okay, so we'll start off with the alley since Zach brought it up. I have not yet heard from City Attorney as to whether the vacations that were done back in the mid-90s are still valid or not. I know that the Public Act for Land Division, Subdivision Control, excuse me, puts a time limit when plats have vacations of any kind that have to go to the circuit court. I suspect that it probably has a shelf life, but I don't know that, and until I hear from Scott Menzel, it would just be speculation, but at least we're investigating it. So what I instructed Mr. Smith to do is just, you know, go ahead and finish out your survey, because if it is in fact still valid, that those vacations are valid, he's going to have to do that anyway. So at least it's something he can continue to move on until we figure this out. Excuse me, please forgive me. Housing Task Force. This group has been working for the last 8 months compiling demographic data and really peeling the onion, so to speak, as to what is affordable, what are the housing needs in the city. And on a very surface level, they could start to write their report and make their time frame for December. But one of the things they think would be very helpful and would actually support the document or their work is if they had some sort of public input, some feedback from the public. And I think you all know, any good planning exercise does involve public input. Whether that's a survey of the residents and businesses or an open house sort of forum that includes that type of questioning, the task force feels that it would be important to do that. What they need to know though is, and they need you to know is, if they do that, they can't get it all done before the end of the year and meet their time frame. So they'd like to know if council would support going and doing this public outreach, and if so, would you be willing to extend that time frame beyond December 31st to possibly March 31st, or March of 2020. So I don't know if you wanted to ask me any questions on that, or if you want me to come back with a formal request to you at your next meeting. I'd like to know what you think.
Well, I'll fill in a bit more. We thought there's a lot of value in having some sort of public meeting, but we weren't sure if that's something that the Housing Task Force wanted to do, time was tight, or we just recommend to City Council, here's what we found, here are some possible things, go to a public meeting. So there's that, who wants to do it, so we decided to bring it back to council if it's something you want that group to do.
I think my feeling on that is I'd like to see the group present the information or whatever you discovered to council, and then let's have that discussion at that time. And if we think you need to do a public meeting and that it's appropriate that that group does it, we can
Extend the charge.
Yeah, extend it and make the decision. But I'd like to see you keep going and then bring the stuff back to us, because it was set in motion as a investigative, do the work and bring it back type thing, not recommending, if you will, as opposed to recommending, you know what I mean? And if you're semi on time, I mean, I'm good with that. When we did that meet and greet with all the boards, I think I asked Joe when he was talking, is a year enough? I'm not against it. You need another month or two to get this stuff done. That doesn't bother me in the least, but I think I'd like to just have you do the work you feel you can do in the time that you have, and then bring it back and tell us what you either can't do, or, you know, what recommendations, not, you know, I mean, what ideas you have, whatever. That's my feeling. Don?
I'm being close to that group. I disagree. I think what we want to bring back is a complete report. We don't want to bring back partial report and then have to go back and work on something. And I think that, you know, I always think that public input is important. So I'm in favor of extending that.
Oh, you need the public meeting to do to finish, is what you think?
I think public input will tell us, as we compile the report, what we're working with. I don't.
Scott?
I don't have a strong opinion about seeking public input or extending the schedule, but I think that before any kind of public meeting is set, I think the council should at least have the opportunity to hear a summary of the information that's been acquired so far. So I don't necessarily think a full report needs to be prepared in writing, but I would like a summary so that we can understand where the task force is at this point.
Okay. Anybody else? Otherwise, I'll just go on. Okay. Thank you. The second, not second, but next on the list is the development review applications. Avalon submitted theirs last Friday. It's been cataloged and sent out to our planning and engineering consultants, to Department of Public Services, and to DAFD. Excuse me. Public hearing notice has been sent to the paper, and you'll see that in this Wednesday's edition of the Sun-Times. And Planning Commission will conduct that public hearing at its next meeting, which is Tuesday, September 3rd. And it's Tuesday because of Labor Day being Monday. The other site plan review application that came in was for K-Space. That's a combined preliminary and final site plan. That one should be fairly easy. Most of the things in the industrial park are, because it's already a developed site. Excuse me. I don't see any problems with that one. In my report, you'll notice that there is a mention of trees, mostly maples, that are, we're noticing are either dying, maybe they have disease, or they're in some sort of distress. Kurt and I walked the city in Older Village area with Bob Burkholtz, Washtenaw County's Michigan State Extension person that knows all about trees and such. He also happens to live in the community. I don't know, maybe some of you know Bob Burkholtz. Very knowledgeable. He was very helpful. What we thought might all be Vercillium wilt, which is a fungus that gets in the soil and then attacks trees that have maybe are weakened from anything from I'll call it a boo-boo on the bark, to something more major. There is no fungicide, there is no treatment that will fix the tree once that fungus gets in. Well, the good news is not all of the trees that we've noticed have this. But the decline in a lot of the trees is because they're damaged, or they've had some damage somewhere in their life, and bugs or borers get in and wreak havoc, and slowly the tree dies. Or you've got situations where those trees, especially ones that are along Ann Arbor Street, over 100 years old in some cases most likely, that were there before sidewalks or roads were changed. And so the root systems have become compromised, and then the tree eventually has some problems. There are some dead limbing things that he recommended. There are a few trees that he suggested we take down immediately, and so Kurt and I will work on that. But we may have to do a more involved inventory at some point, and the DNR just sent out their community forestry grant. While it won't help with planting or taking trees down, it does help with planning and management. And so maybe as an update to our current tree manual or tree plan, there's a possibility that we could have a management plan for what to do about these trees that are distressed. And then when the DTE tree grant comes out, we'll use that one to try and replace. So, but it's going to be a long-term thing. The other thing he helped us with was the trees in downtown, the ones that are in the sidewalk in the DDA streetscape. The thing that was very informative that I have not heard from anybody else, including some very renowned landscape architects, is when you're putting in your treescapes, even though you may be putting in urban trees or trees that are designed that can take or are tolerant to an urban landscape, you really can't expect more than 8 to 10 years out of them. So we are, with our DDA streetscape, a lot of those trees have been showing some age for the last few years. We can do some trimming on them, but we're going to have to start finding new trees to replace. And we won't do them all at one time, obviously, but over the course of the next 5 or so years, just slowly do certain ones.
We should be growing our own someplace else and have
Create our
more
own
ready.
little arboretum. We may have to annex property to do that.
Part of the park.
Not enough room. We need a lot of room for an arboretum. That was a question we asked him. So that's it. That's all I've got. One last thing, sorry, I lied. We have a meeting with Dexter Schools on Wednesday afternoon to discuss 2 options for a proposed pole barn storage building. One option is on the Shield Road property, the Norton?
It's kind of between Naylor's house and the Proctor house.
In the Proctor house, yes. The other one is the northeast corner of Creekside, where the Lions Club does the Christmas tree sale. That would be where that's the second option. I'm not sure what their primary desire is.
They really don't want trailhead parking there, do they?
So that's where we're at. We're going to have that meeting, and I'll have more information the next Yes, Sam.
Do you think that they consider that their backyard then? That area on Baker?
Being that we haven't had that discussion, I don't know if they consider that their backyard or if they just look at that as because there's already one.
Next to the existing.
It just, for them, is logical to place it there.
Well, I asked the question in mind of the fact that we always were going to spruce up that entryway to Dexter because that's a lot of people come from the highway.
Right. My main concern as a planner is that if it's just going to be a storage building in that prominent area, what happens if at some point they need it to be something more than storage, that they need to convert it to classrooms or something else? It's most likely going to be very little investment for the building to begin with. And I'm a little concerned as to how that's going to look on Baker Road.
Well, that's what my point too is that I hope they're not thinking that it's the backyard.
Yeah.
Because it's not our backyard.
No, you're right, it's not. I'm sorry?
There's already a full backyard.
Well, there's a small one, but it's set back considerably, and this would be a little bigger.
I just had a question about the small cell 5G topic.
Yes.
So, wondering whether there are any communities in the county that are farther along in that process than we are.
Ann Arbor and Allison Heatley, I can keep in touch with her because she's the main contact for Ann Arbor,
Okay.
being that she's on our planning commission.
Right.
Yeah, I can stay in touch with her, and they're working with Mr. Weber as well. So.
Okay. And farther along being?
I think they've already got a proposal from him.
Okay.
Okay.
But that's not very far along.
No, but they also did, they've had more applications come through, so they're in a little more urgency than we are. But I don't want to have to be chasing the issue.
Yeah, it's going to be a tricky one.
I think so.
Aesthetically.
Yes, yes. So.
Other questions for Michelle?
I will be out of the office Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday this week. I'll be at the Economic Developers Annual Meeting. It's in Marquette this year, so hopefully I've got some really interesting things to tell you when I get back. Okay?
Safe travels.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Michelle.
Oh, sorry, what am I saying? Sorry. Gunther Homes did an excellent job cleaning up and making sure that the parking area was not only open, but clean, because part of that had to be for the antique car show, and the rest was for the just plain parking for people. They really did a really good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There is a written set of reports from the county sheriff for June and July. Mr. Smith.
I've got a question on the map on page 53.
Okay.
Just trying to, on the legend there, when the map pins where they say number 2.
Yeah, that's because there was 2 incidents, so they're kind of like on top
Okay,
of each other.
but what type of incident?
Yeah, I'm not
are
sure.
they?
It doesn't give that kind of detail.
I thought maybe the 2 meant, okay, the second one on the list.
No, it
which-
just means that there was 2 different incidents.
Okay. And then the other is, wondering what's causing all the alarms up in Dexter Crossing. There seemed to be, only one was up in the shopping part.
Yeah, there was 2 in the industrial park, so that makes it look like a Dexter Crossing, but there
okay.
was, 2 in the industrial park, 1 in the shopping center, and then 2 in Dexter.
Okay.
So.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Cousins.
A couple of comments on the chamber. I don't know if you've heard, but Betsy Salady, who was the executive director, has resigned.
No.
Yes, okay. And so that vacancy, we will have a meeting here on the last Tuesday of the month. Did I say Tuesday, Tuesday of the month, yes. Excuse me, Monday of the month at the library at 9 o'clock, okay? So that, we'll find out more then, make more decisions then, okay? There are some emails going back and forth about membership now of people on the executive committee. And there was a vote taken. They didn't even have a quorum. Well, they had a quorum if you count everybody that was there. But two of the people that voted were not members of the chamber, so that are on the executive committee, and that caused them not to be a legitimate vote. So that's got to be worked out as well. There's a number of, and the lawyer that's on our board suggested that, the board suggested that would, should not be discussed any further in public on emails and dealt with in there. So that will be the third interesting meeting I'll have. And I don't know if you've heard, but I think you had before Laura Rubin, who was our executive director of the Watershed Council, had resigned 20 years ago. And we have a new representative, Rebecca, or a new a person that was announced last week on Thursday. Her name is Rebecca Esselman. You have met her. She was the one that presented the coal tar issue to us here in the council. And she, as I kiddingly was able to say, that the center of power of the Watershed Council has now moved from Ann Arbor to Dexter. Okay, and I got quite a laugh out of the group when I said that. But yeah,
She lives here.
It was there, and so she's here. Very happy to have her there. We had two members of the staff that was also on the search committee, as well as a national person that we worked with. And it came down that this was the person that they really felt was the best and had the best job. So you'll see Rebecca around, and Sean, you'll be happy to know they're going to introduce her at the Suds on the River officially. Okay, on that day. Okay.
I will be there.
Sean, that's great. Kickers are going fast. Yeah. That's all I have on those two issues. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions under the sheriff or any other board commissioner reports? Okay, we are down to city manager report.
I just have a few quick things. So I wrote up about the traffic signals. Unless that council has an objection, we're going to move forward with changing out the broad main signals. We can do that and not do the Baker main for right now while we decide what we're going to do about the fact that we would need to upgrade the technology there more than we thought. I do need help with finding crossing guards, so we did advertise that, but I haven't gotten anybody interested. Once we send out the resident letters, I sent a specific note to Walkabout Creek thinking, they're kind of a good population center and that's close to Baker, they might be able to walk over. It'd be nice if just somebody that lived right in the area, like in the Kensington and Arbor Street area, could just do it. So when we send the resident letter for the construction, I'll put that in there. But to make the pedestrian safety things work, we do need the support of the community in terms of finding people that can be crossing guards. So I'm hoping that we get some feedback. We're talking about doing just like a 4-page mini newsletter on pedestrian safety before school starts, and so we can include it in there as well. I'm also talking to the schools about potentially making a video so that they can use that to train the kids on how to use like the rapid flashing beacons and non-signalized crossing. And we had M1 Studios make the video that we had CTAP paid for. That was like a promotional video for the city, and so we're getting a quote for them to see if they could do it again. It was I think it was $5,000, and that was for 2 videos. So hopefully it would be reasonable, and it might be fun to involve Dexter students, so then people would want to watch it, get more coverage if it was local, rather than just some MDOT video that, is boring. So we're looking to get a quote on that as well. So we survived the election. Now we're into plein air, and Justin got his level 2 assessing certificate.
Congrats. You do not have help on it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's about it.
Mr. Cousins.
I was out in the garden area last week, but I walked around to see how the blackberries were doing that on the backside there, As I came around, the building that we have that is the furthest one back had 2 groundhogs coming out from behind it, and there's a hole there that they've dug into there.
Oh, nice.
Dan, do you know if that building has a dirt floor, or is it a paved, is it a concrete floor in that building?
I can go look at it, but I can't tell you.
Well, I'll tell you, if it's not concrete, they're inside the building because they come up inside because that's another escape route for them, okay? And it's warm in the wintertime, okay?
Right.
So we can, I think, get rid of them a variety of ways, but I just want to let you know that there were two of them out there in that spot, okay? And there's a
You can have the guys check.
nice big round of dirt where they go in, okay?
They're so
And they're close to the garden.
Yeah. So
Thank you.
I could tell you how we could get rid of them, but we can't do it in the city.
Just, how did the absentee precinct work for the test run?
I thought it worked well.
Yeah.
We actually have now 4 big supporters of new city offices because they were with us for 8 hours. And yeah, they walked in on me washing my cup in the bathroom and thought that was
As one does.
disturbing. So that was super helpful. But no, I think it went well. They were finished early. All of our numbers came out well. I think it takes pressure off the precincts to have to run through, especially in a busier time.
Excellent.
good idea.
And the canvas is done, so, the county's doing a voluntary audit of elections this year as a partnership with the state. Thank you very much. So we get to participate in that over the next few weeks, but that shouldn't be an issue.
Any other questions for Courtney? Okay. My report is pretty short in the packet there, but I wanted to touch on something that was at that Courtney and I did shortly after last council meeting. If you recall, we had Paul Wiklansky come and speak to us about not offering a 32-gallon toter size. He wanted something that fit better in his garage, and the whole concept of smaller toter, smaller waste, less waste, that type of thing. We did schedule a meeting, and Courtney touched on in her report, meeting with Pat Creevy, just to kind of let him know that there was some of those comments coming in, and that there might be some people that actually want even a smaller size than the 64 or the 96. Pat's willing to do whatever we want, essentially, if we want to make a change, okay? But we agreed that, we're in the first couple of weeks of this. They don't even have I don't think the new trucks are out yet, right?
No.
I didn't see who picked up my garbage today, but the new trucks aren't out yet.
The recycle one.
Yeah, they're getting, they
Oh,
have
was it with
one
the
now,
arm?
I think.
Okay, so those they're just rolling those out. The postcards for people to make a choice to either go up in size on the recycle or down in size on the garbage one are due this week.
15th.
The 15th. So we thought it made sense to get some data back. If only 25 people requested to go down in size, that's either a sign that, the sizes are correct, or not that many people would want to probably go to 32. It could also be an argument that there's not that many 32s to manage. Waste management is concerned about managing the numbers, is really what it comes down to. And the 96 and the 64 offer, they're more common sizes for them. But I wanted everybody to know we did meet with Pat, and what we agreed to do was, let's get through this first round, see how many people request to change, let them manage that change, which was going to take place a couple of months later in September, and then just see what kind of other things come up as residents and businesses get used to the new program, and then we can re-engage it with him. So we've communicated that to Paul. He did copy everybody on an email today.
Yeah.
If you had a chance to see it, I think it was today, right? But I did convey to Paul that we met, and so wanted everybody to know that.
I just when I drive through on Monday morning, I just kind of drive. I was going down to my PT this morning, and I came back and took another route and got back down. I think the residents are doing really well putting stuff out in the right directions and keeping it 3 feet apart or close to whatever that happens to be for them. I think that's it, but I did know three recycles today that were filled and I guess we'd say overflowing, okay? And I happened to be also on the street when the the garbage guy came by, and they were both sides, they're picking up both sides at the same time, and I tell you what, those guys struggle with those big things to get them in there to dump them, because they don't have lifts. So I asked the guy today, well, when are you gonna get there? And he said, probably not for another 6 months. And the reason, he said, is that they're trying to construct their buildings for the right height for their trucks, these new trucks to come in. So I didn't know, I guess I was a little shocked that Waste Management wanted to do it that fast for us and not be ready for it, but that's their problem. And you know, they got to have, these guys are big guys, both of them, and it's a good thing they work, because I wouldn't want to be working even the street trying to lift those things up and into those things. They're big and cumbersome, even if they're not heavy, they're big and cumbersome.
Well, and if you don't have a lot of garbage in them,
yeah,
you know, it's not even easy to reach in to get it, because it's way down, it's deep, you know, whereas in a smaller one, you need.
It's in a bag, right? Yeah.
But
I think it's gonna take me a year to fill mine up. I'm not carrying all the garbage.
Did you return your postcard for the smaller one?
I didn't yet, but I have to find
Time, yeah. We have them in the office if you need them.
Thank you.
And then just last comment, in case anybody has any questions, I did make an appointment recommendation on the consent agenda to replace Fred, who wanted to step down.
Will that put Phil on 2 committees then? Or is he-
Technically, yes. He'd be on the DDA as a,
And ZBA.
and ZBA.
Have we done it in the past?
We have.
Okay.
I mean, it's not common, I've not.
Yeah, I just wondered. Okay.
Yeah. And then I put the meeting packet along with my report in the packet. I figured I might as well get that out there, everybody's looking at it. How did council kind of ask, how did you think the meeting went? I thought it was a good meeting, good discussion of stuff, right?
Yeah, it was good.
Okay.
And it'd been nice if we had the number that we had here, you know, to have that same discussion with.
Right.
It was good.
Okay, we will move on to consent agenda then, please.
I move we approve the 3 items listed on the consent agenda. Bills and payroll in the amount of $457,462.57. The appointment of Phil Mackes to the DDA, and setting a public hearing for North September 9th for a sale of a portion of our property at Dan Hoy Road to Avalon Housing.
Motion by Fisher, second by Mr. Smith. Please call the vote, please.
Bell?
No, I'm sorry, yes.
Cousins?
No.
That would be-
And that's changing my mind.
Okay, look at this here. Fisher?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Michelle's?
Yes.
Knight?
Yes.
Keo?
Yes. Motion carries 6-1 again, right? We have no old business, so we're down to new business. Item L1, which is consideration of the waiver of conditions in the purchase agreement for the Dexter Ann Arbor Road property.
I will move or direct staff to send a letter to MAB indicating that the project is satisfied, and to approve closing date of August 20th.
Second?
And can you add just making me the signatory on the closing documents?
And that.
You might want to do that too.
Okay.
The mayor will be on town.
Motion by Michelle's, second by Smith, right? Thank you.
Matt was nice to move it at my request because I wanted to leave on vacation. So.
So I asked Courtney for, at the last meeting, you may recall, with all the easements and stuff that were out there, I said there wasn't a map that showed how they all fit together and where they were in relation to all of this. And she's got a map in there that shows a lot of them. It's on page 146 of the packet, so with the yellow highlights. And I'm still not clear on the 66-foot wide ingress egress. It's a private ingress egress easement number 3, which, if you look at the document, says also for public, potentially public utilities. But in all the previous So I'm not sure where that is in the process.
3 is on Rainbow's property.
No, I'm sorry.
No, it's the one on the
It's
far
actually,
left.
on the far left, there's a 66-foot wide
Ingress, egress.
egress,
It's in a weird
egress.
place.
It's offset from, it's parallel to Meadowview, just east of it. But
Is that number 5? then?
well, it's not numbered. That's what's odd about
Yeah,
it.
it's not in the,
It's not one of the ones
okay.
that's in the packet.
Okay.
But yet it's shown on the drawing that was chosen to be part of the
Okay, I got
presentation
you.
of the information.
Yeah.
And it's, potentially, or not potentially, right, it's part of the property that we're buying. I'm on page 146 in the
Yeah, we're
packet.
trying to go it up.
Okay. All right, so the second thing that I want to call to council's attention, if you look at the far left part of that page, where Meadowview Drive is, it shows the 66-foot wide egress easement, which is more commonly known as Meadowview, right? But you can see that what's there, that bold line does not go all the way past the sidewalk that is on the east side of Meadowview. So I asked Courtney to tell me, when was Meadowview dedicated? And she was able to find in May of 2000 that the City Council accepted a dedication of Meadowview, 66 feet wide, at that time. So I said, well, what about the sidewalk property? It's between Meadowview and the line that is supposed to be the property we're potentially buying. And so far, as of, unless you found something in the last little bit,
No, I left when you left the office. so.
there isn't a dedication of that property to us. It appears as though it was created when Boulder Park 1, or it was called the Dexter Medical Center, or whatever complex when it was first coming through planning commission. It appears that they took the 66-foot right-of-way and proposed adding 19 feet on the east side and 15 more on the west to make Meadowview a total of 100. Although everything we see in here says variable width. Now, it's variable width as it goes up north of where our property, I'm sorry, maybe it's east, to the top of the page. I guess what all I wanted to say is, I want to make sure what we're buying isn't that we're buying something we already think we have, and if that's already been, when you look at all the drawings or look at Washtenaw GIS, the right-of-way line is over there past the sidewalk. But I don't find anywhere that, or we haven't been able to find today anywhere that we have accepted that property. So I don't know if maybe we have to go back to the site plan process. Michelle was helping look at this. I think there's a detail out there, and I also want to make sure that that egress easement on all the previous property deals of this property, as it's transferred from the schools to the Wallaces, to Vlasic, to LLC, known as MAV, da-da-da-da.
Vlasic was made up, right?
This easement comes with it. Okay, now our legal description that you showed me today, Courtney, does not say anything about this easement.
What?
The legal description doesn't say anything, the proposed legal description for the property that we're buying doesn't say anything about that easement.
No, the legal description of the property doesn't.
No, but the other deeds that pass it along mention it in the same breath.
Right.
And since there's a conveyance that's proposed, I don't know that we can remove all the conditions yet.
And yet today is the date that we have to do that, correct?
Yes.
Right, it was supposed to be 3 weeks ago.
And we have an agreement through MAF that this is okay to do it today, correct?
Right. Yes. You give
Yeah,
an extension to
that part was covered. So I just wanted to make you aware of that. I'm not in favor of buying the property at this time anyway, so maybe my comments are not that important or whatever. Maybe you can work through that, but at some point I think we need to verify the dedication of the property to the left of it, and because at one time when we did the letter of intent and the agreement, all of this was, we're buying it based upon the square square footage, right? There was an estimated square footage. And I just want, and I've tried to look at a bunch of stuff today to make sure surveying wise that what we're buying goes right up to that line, and I think it does. But in the case that it doesn't, I just want everybody to be aware that I'd like to double check that. So that I don't want to double pay for something, don't want to pay for something twice, it's already ours if it's already ours. But if there's a dedication that needs to take place, we may have to do that if it hasn't been done or we don't find it. You'll notice on here, on this piece, this is the Alta survey. The background of this drawing is the Alta survey that was done for the Rainbow Child Care just 2 years ago. And you'll notice up there, just at the top of the page, it says roadway dedication, and then in parentheses it says instrument not provided, meaning they couldn't find something either.
Well,
So that either means it doesn't exist, or if it does exist, it wasn't recorded if we did it, if we did something.
for the sidewalk, I mean, we definitely have a recorded metal view.
Yes. No,
For 66 feet.
but I want to be able to, well, if we're going to have this property, we want it to touch Meadowview. That was the whole point, or to touch the right of way. And I'm not sure that officially what we're calling right of way is ours yet. Or
And I guess the point is that it doesn't, it's just a narrow strip that you say they would still own?
We probably need to just dedicate it. It was probably should have been dedicated back when Boulder Park was put in, but the way that things were handled back then was less than coherent.
Right.
So we probably just need to go back and have council accept that dedication. If you look at any document, like county, like you said, county GIS, whatever, it all looks like it was done. We just can't find the physical piece of paper that says that that was done, so.
well, and neither could the person that did the Alta survey before us.
Right.
So it's not, people have tried.
Well, are we in a rush now, given that MAP knows we want that piece of property? Why would we be concerned about taking time?
Well, because we have to close next Tuesday.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, I think it doesn't necessarily preclude us from finding the answers to these things, but I couldn't do that today.
Okay.
So if it wasn't dedicated, the property would include all the way to the edge of the curb, essentially.
Well, I don't know that. That's what's tricky about this. That's why I asked for an overall drawing. If you go to the right of this drawing, the property that they gave to, or that they sold 2 acres to for the daycare center is written out to the center line of Eaton Court, or what's the Eaton Court ingress egress. Can you see that? That gold line goes all the way out there? Now ours, what we're buying, in theory doesn't. It stops short. So there's two different methods for writing property descriptions. You go out to the center of the road and you give something back, or it's already been given and you stop it short. And all I'm saying is that our task is to try and not have any questions when we buy a property, and I'm suggesting that there are some.
Well, we don't need to have road access to Meadowview, correct? We have from Eden Court and from Ann Arbor, Baker, both the frontage and existing shared access easement, so it's not like we would not be able to get to the property. And if we do own the back of the curb, we can always dedicate it to the right of way. So the big thing would be if it was included in the square footage, we'd be overpaying a bit. Which I don't like to overpay, but in the scheme of things,
Zach, as best I can tell, I don't think that 19 feet is part of what we're buying, based upon my going from both ends, reading legal descriptions. But I'm not really trying to play surveyor in this role. I'm just trying to indicate that there's a gap there that's undefined. That's all. And then there's that other easement that is on this drawing that was presented, but is not anywhere talked about as a numbered something.
And did anyone pull those levers and pages?
Yeah, I have them right here.
Does it say to whom the access easement is granted?
Well,
I suspect it's ancient before it was subdivided.
it seemed like it was originally between the Wallaces and the schools. Is where it started, when the Dexter schools and the Wallace property, and then it kind of just kept getting tacked on to everything ever since, so.
But it's written very interesting. It's a private easement. It's a private ingress and egress with public utilities.
Well, no, it says a 66-foot wide private easement for ingress, egress, and public utilities, described as follows, is what it says, so. That's why when I originally read it, I just figured it was to the city, so if we didn't need it, we would just extinguish it.
And who's the dominant estate? Who's the holder of it? Is it the schools or Wallace? Who has?
What I was thinking is the rights of holding it transferred every time the property went, is what I was thinking, but
Well, it should have stayed, I mean, I think that it was,
but like I said, what we're buying,
Wallace, it looks like Wallace gave that to the schools, for whatever reason. I don't know why the schools would have ever. Yeah, subject to an easement, actually, it might have even already existed, because it was in that original property when the schools conveyed it to Wallace, it was already in the description. So maybe there's even something before this, and this was back in '93. But this was the first library page reference on the map, was this 2770168. Maybe it's the 2.
So, at the last one we had, there was the indication that there was this missing.
this wasn't, to my recollection, when Scott wrote the memo that said he was looking at all the things that were encumbering the property, this didn't even come up. It wasn't even on the list. So what I'm suggesting is maybe, again, group effort here, right? I'm suggesting that when we make the motion to purchase, that maybe if you're gonna waive all the conditions, maybe you don't quite waive them all, and you say, hey, we wanna go forward, but we want a few extra days. Because, in fairness to Courtney, I mean, we just got this before the weekend, and I didn't really get into it until yesterday, today, and she's only had today to react to me, but Jeff has been a fair guy. I just think that the motion ought to be not, you know what I'm getting at? You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I mean, when I offered to him changing the closing date, I offered the 20th or the 27th, and he said he preferred the 20th, so, I mean, he might be willing to do the 27th. That would give us a couple more days to figure out the origin of this.
So I just want to make sure, that if it's something that all we have to do is dissolve, then it's that easy. Because otherwise I don't want something encumbered.
Yeah, so for those of you not familiar with ingress egress easements, they're typically created when someone owns property that is landlocked,
right,
and they need to get across it. 66 feet is a standard number. A lot of communities have that because that's the minimum accepted for right-of-ways. So the language allowing for utilities is basically you wake up an attorney in the middle of the night and they throw that up at you. I'm not so nervous about this because as I recall, the site plan David prepared actually showed that on there and it didn't encumber on the building or the functioning of the site. And that's not the only way to get north of this property anymore. So there are ways to dissolve it. We basically just have to go to court and say it's not needed anymore. There's a bit of a process, but I don't think anyone's going to come in and say I need to be able to get to my thing over that. So for me, it's not going to keep me up at night.
And a motion on the floor right now.
It's made by Michelle, second by Smith to, let me go back up, direct staff to send a letter to MAV indicating that the conditions are satisfied and to request the council approve the moving date, the closing date to the 20th, and I think she added that so she could sign the documents.
And I'll just say at the last meeting, it was my understanding of the motion that we had accepted these conditions, so.
That's what I thought.
But good for us to double check.
This is, additional information.
Not change, what you're saying, Jim, it's not changing the basic part, it's just the additional information we have.
But it's still something that should get clarified.
Can be clarified after the vote?
Yeah, he didn't put the. property on the easement. Just look that up.
Are there any other council comments on this topic?
I'm ready to vote on it as a motion there and ask for clarification from Matt and for the concern here. Sure that they clarify it up as they put it out there. They put it out there, this piece of property that they were selling it.
Yeah, but if, we don't know whether to alter the price or not.
Only if you don't have it, we'll not.
If it's already been dedicated, part of that property is dedicated to us already.
Yeah, I think
That's not included in
so there's two issues. One is the 19 feet, I think it's 19 feet, that I believe is adjacent to the property that
Right.
we're
So it's
proposing to buy.
this is the property we're purchasing
That's not,
here. It's not included.
I'm not saying that's, I think we just have to go back and figure out, was it ever dedicated and where, and then why isn't, if it was dedicated, why isn't that recorded somewhere so you can find it if it's recorded?
Right.
Okay, that is not, I don't think that's Mav's issue because that's
history.
I'm guessing it's not Mav's issue, okay? Because
They probably thought it was.
And if the county's GIS is showing, if they create that on basis of some records, they don't just suck at lines.
Right.
We can continue to
So, and then the second issue is that on the 448-foot piece of property, there's this easement that
We just need to figure out how to get it extended.
it wasn't in the title work review that our attorney did 3 weeks ago, and it's shown on the drawing that's presented tonight, and I'm suggesting we should better understand it before just boldly accepting.
And where's this drawing come from?
This drawing is Mav.
Oh, that drawing, the background for that drawing, the page 146 with the yellow on it, the background for that is, I believe, is the Alta survey.
When they did the lot split.
When they did the lot split, the Rainbow team, am I saying that right, Rainbow?
Well, it was KinderCare.
KinderCare, sorry, that's
KinderCare.
the KinderCare paid for the, but they found it. It's interesting that they found it, and for whatever reason, we didn't talk about it 3 weeks ago. So, anyway, I just want to express my thoughts on that and concerns. No other council members want to talk on this topic? Okay, Mr. Jones, please call the vote to do as we just have talked about.
Smith?
Yes.
Bell?
No.
Cousins?
Yes.
Fisher?
No.
Knight? Yes. Shells?
Yes.
Yes.
No. Okay, so motion carries 4-3. Okay, new business item L2, consideration of release of funds for the purchase of Dexter Ann Arbor Road property.
Yep, so we need to now pay for it.
Could you describe why these are your recommendations?
Yeah, we don't need the 67,000 anymore because the DDA took over the payments. We have this restricted reserve for facilities, so that's not really impacting unrestricted reserve, and then the rest would come from our unrestricted reserve balance. We're not going to use our 15% fund balance. I don't think we want to use the fire capital equipment. And then we can't use Milk Creek Park Phase 2 yet because we haven't put out the bid to know what it's going to cost. So, and then I did have the note in there that if council wants to retain the possibility of being reimbursed by the bond within 60 days of closing, we need to adopt a resolution stating that we're interested in doing so. And I've attached that to the file.
I move we accept the staff recommendation regarding the release of funds for purchase of the Dexter and Arbor Road property.
Second.
Moved by Smith, second by Michelle. Any discussion?
Just a question, Corey. If the sale of the Avalon property occurs, which I think it does, So that there is what amount of money that we have coming from that sale?
285 divided by 2 plus some interest, so 170 something-ish, 160, so.
Would it be appropriate to either add to that motion or to make another motion that money from that sale come back in and then to
That actually
refill?
exists already, because when you guys made the motion to move forward with buying this,
Okay, we get that,
or
right?
move forward with negotiating the purchase agreement, you said that the Avalon funds would go back to facilities, or towards this, but obviously that will happen later. So my assumption would be that would go back to replenish the facility funds.
Thank you, that's what I know.
We don't have to do a special resolution for that, only if we're using bond money to refill
Correct.
what we've already got
Yep.
spent for. Okay.
Okay.
That's all just
All set.
council
Thank you.
money, you know, you can change that, you can move that around on your own will, but if you want it to potentially come back from the bond money, that's when you have to do the resolution. So we don't have to decide that now, you can let me know if you want me to draft that.
60 days from the 20th.
Yeah.
For what it's worth, I would like to see that back. I think some of the money we don't have to refill, like facilities, it's a facility. But having that option to refill the others, the unrestricted, is good. So I would like to see this back within the 60 days.
Yeah, I think the only thing, if we're gonna bring that back, I'd like to understand, let's say we chose to put 200,000 back in unrestricted, right? Because that's what you're...
You mean, I'm sorry, so we sell the bond and then put it back?
Right, that's what the resolution would do, right?
Yeah.
But, I guess I'd like to know, so you put the 200,000 back, and how much are you gonna pay on the 200,000 over 20 years versus what you would have? Just, 200,000 sitting there. I mean, unless you have a purpose for it. There's, the opposite thought would be, you're just increasing the size of the bond and paying more down the road on stuff. So I don't know, I haven't thought it through, but I'd like to better understand that if we're gonna actually vote on that.
But my understanding was this allows us, it doesn't require us to do that. Right.
Okay, so you're thinking more of it from a keep the door open perspective at this point?
Yeah.
Fair enough. Other council comments? Okay, please call the vote to accept the staff recommendation to use the 67,000 that was previously restricted for the substation, to use the 294,074 from facilities, and the balance from unrestricted reserve to pay the approximate 514,000 that is still due.
Fisher.
No.
Smith.
Yes.
Cousins.
Yes.
Knight.
Yes.
Michelle's.
Yes.
Bell.
No.
Keo.
No. So motion carries 4-3. Okay, new business item L3. Consideration of fire station, police station / police station, and city hall / police station concept designs. It's okay, Zach, you requested this be on the agenda,
Yeah.
so I'll let you introduce this.
So I'll try to do it in little bits and pieces. So I move the establishment of a design committee to get more detail in order to share the future vision of the MAV site with fire station, possible police substation, including refinements and value engineering, with the details to be discussed either after the motion or separate motions.
Say that out again, please.
So the motion is just to create the design committee, not with the exact details, but I'm going to wander a little bit here. I'll try to get more succinct back to the motion, but based on the recommendation, the best practice if you're going to build this complex building from Mr. Newell was you want to get these groups in the room. And we heard at the public meeting in Mayor Keogh's comments, there's get more detail in order to share the future vision. We have a kind of concept plan for the station out there, but it hasn't been value engineered. The chief hasn't been able to massage it since it came out. And I think that's something valuable that ought to happen in order for us to be able to say, here's a more firm idea of what we want to do. So the motion is to establish that design committee, both to refine and to conduct value engineering. And either as part of discussion or separate motions, going the details, kind of the policy statements and who we want to be on it, that type of stuff. So just to create for the Madison is the motion.
I'll support that so that we can determine the planning team then.
We're doing Robert's rules tonight. It's fun. Well, so I'll start. What I have down here is basically what was recommended at the session. DAFD chief, junior member of the DAFD selected by the chief. The idea was that in 15 or 20 years, you're going to want someone who knew why certain decisions were made. Also, it's a good way to educate young firefighters of why things happen. Representative Washington County Sheriff's Department in case the substation goes there. Member of City Council, so that someone from this policy is there at least to inform and communicate back and forth. Mr. Gasson, because he's been the local architect. And then I threw in, or included, a member of Stuart Cooper Newell. Again, for the idea that someone who does this on a national basis and day in and day out, that they would have better ideas of where to wring money out, where you can do prefabricated structures, where not to do prefabricated structures. And that's why I put this down there. It's basically what the recommendation was from there.
So, Zach, in this discussion and in your list there, the thing that is absent to me is that the city is going to own the building. So if you're going to have a committee that's discussing the building, I think somebody from, I mean, not just one council member, but the staff person, at least a staff person should be on this.
Myself, I'd rather see Courtney on there than a council person.
I can see value for both. From my experience on the housing task force, there will be times where they'll kind of look at one of us and say, what sort of policy direction you guys want to go, or what's the purpose on here. So I could see value for both.
I support both too.
But I'd also, before permanently establishing a committee, it'd be nice to know what the cost of putting this committee together is and what the cost of, 2 sets of architects and...
At this point, I don't think we need to bring in a second architect. I think that can wait till a later time. Because I think the first step should be to get the chief and David working together. I think that's the important next step. I would rather see them working together on this and then, come back to this body and, in a work session or whatever, give us an update of what they've seen, get our input at that point.
Yep, and I agree, some sort of cost not to exceed would be valuable. We've been kind of just blindly throwing tasks at Mr. Gasson, and we got a bill for $20,000 recently for those 2 sets of plans and boards. So I included that as part of our discussion that we ought to don't exceed this.
I think there's a lot more than that,
Yeah, it was a year's worth of work, so.
But he doesn't invoice regularly, so
Right.
it adds up, is your point.
But we haven't really discussed, here, Dave, go do these things, and this is the most amount of money, which is something that we ought to be, I think, more paying attention to.
So as a responsible citizen, as a responsible council member, you say he doesn't bill us on a regular basis, do we know how much we owe him?
Nothing now.
Nothing now.
No, we're zeroed up. He just, you know, he didn't bill us very often during the 3 years that he did the.
Legitimate.
He just held
I
it.
want to know where we are now, and there was question about how much it was. and-
That was through the end of the fiscal year.
Thank you.
I did send him this packet just so he was aware of it.
I think to get started, I would put David and Chief and Courtney together and let them get started on it.
If I may, is feedback from the chief of council's at a low point.
Say it again?
Yeah,
You wanted to speak?
I've got another thought. Go ahead, Mr. Question.
Oh, no, I just wondered if the chief had any thoughts on the spaghetti I'm throwing in his face.
Sure. Well, I think there's been a lot of work, and David's done a lot of work, and we did come up with that. I think one of the most productive meetings we had was with Courtney and myself and David and one of the sheriff representatives that actually kind of worked through this concept design. I think that you're requesting two competing entities to work on this right now. David Gasson from Partners and Architects, nationally known company that designs fire station, and David can reach out to a lot of people that can do the same thing that Ken Newell can. And they're a very reputable company as well. I guess if I had to lay out a path for you, it would be along the line of myself and Courtney and David and probably somebody from the sheriff's department, if that's what we want to do with them. Let us work on it, and then if there's such a time where you need a third-party validation of what we came up with, have some money set aside so that we can go out and call Ken Newell and say, hey, give us a third-party look at that because we're just struggling with that piece of the project. I think that would be the course to lay out there and the most cost-effective. Having two competing architects on from the very beginning, architects and engineers, may not bode well for the project.
Well, one of the things I was thinking about was, with the roundabouts, the Washington County Road Commission, OHM, was the design engineer on the roundabout, but they had a double check with Orston, who was a nationally known roundabout expert, who kind of QA/QC'd the dimensions and the radii and everything on the roundabouts, and I mean, that didn't seem to be overly dramatic, so maybe it could be something like that where, if you have a plan and then you just submit it to them for, like you were saying, could you move this wall, or could you, or just for some thoughts?
Yeah, I think with O&M and that roundabout piece, O&M probably didn't have the experience on the roundabouts that that company did. In this case, you've got Partners and Architects, and you've got Stuart Newell, who are both at the federal level. They got places all over the country, and so they are at the same level of people that they can pull in. I wouldn't want to get that relationship to get convoluted and competing. If one of the companies decides that, hey, we think this is a route that we want to go, and the other one says, well, we don't like that, we tend to do things differently as a group of architects and engineers, it can start bogging the project down just because they're both at that same level. And I don't know OHM and where they're at in the roundabouts, but I honestly is having one firm to work with until we get to a point where we really want to get that last set of eyes on it, I think is prudent to move forward.
Well, unless there are objections from the seconder, I would amend it that the committee consists of DAFD Chief, Representative Washtenaw County Sheriff's Department, Mr. Gasson of Partners in Architecture, and City Manager Nichols.
I still think the junior member of DAFD is pulled out, isn't it?
What's that?
That you eliminated the junior member of DAFD?
Oh yeah, I went over that.
Yeah.
Well, I don't have a problem with that. I certainly don't have anybody on staff right now that's ever worked on a fire station, but it'd be nice to bring somebody in and have them work through that process. I only hope to be here another 5 or 6 more years, and you're going to need somebody that knows what's going on.
For all the yes, and including junior member.
Yeah.
And I guess if you're looking for more people I wouldn't be opposed as that being the base committee,
with the ability to bring in others from time to time. For instance, Dan, I'm not going to throw you, I guess I will throw you in the bus. But
We'll make him the chair.
you know, the city's going to maintain the building and deal with all of that stuff. And there may be times where we want to sit down, come in and talk to
Or
us.
Kurt.
That's
I
what
mean,
we
Kurt's
think.
the one that gets a lot of the phone calls too.
I would say the committee would be able to bring in whoever they needed to be talking to. I like this 5 to start with.
And we can get we can explain to David and get a scope, from him for what he thinks that would entail. I mean, we're not starting from scratch here.
Yeah, it's just refining and giving more vision. So.
Now, do we want to kind of an idea timeline wise?
Yeah, we can do that
Can we do it in a month?
Probably. I think with that group of people.
End of September?
Oh, the end of September.
Yeah.
We can bring you something back
Need
by
to
the
ask
end of
David that
September.
question.
Yeah,
I believe David's time's going to be the one that's limited, or the limiting factor more so than
First
mine.
meeting in October?
We can
Well,
look toward that.
let's shoot for the end of September if we can, if David can do it.
Somewhere in that area.
I thought the concept David put together was very, very good. We have some tweaks on it. I don't know that we have that much that we would change on that. The sheriff is going to be the underlying piece. What occurred with that project, after we put it together, the representative from the sheriff came in and said, well, I really don't think we need all that much space. So I was trying to do a conservative building that meets today's needs and it'll go for 75 years. I think they reached some things that were way above what they really needed and backtracked a little bit. So we'll touch that piece.
Well, the sheriff to me is the outlier here. I don't have enough hands to tell me how many times sheriffs have changed in this city since I've been here, okay? So, as Chief just mentioned, somebody said they didn't need that much. I don't think this other person needs that much. This last person said they like to be downtown. The other person didn't have a problem with that. They were glad to develop and work for this process here. So I think that was to me is the least important of the whole picture. If we decide that we are going to put the sheriff along with the fire department there and have our public service together, then we'll make the determination of the size and where they're going to be. I think that's appropriate for us to do that. But I just think that I don't want to be just here on the whim of who happens to be at the top of the sheriff's today and won't be here another year or 6 months and get changed by the powers that be there. The other thing is that I guess I would like a quote from David on what he thinks it's going to be, or a general thing. It doesn't have to be exact, but I'd like to also find out what the cost would be to bring somebody else in. Do you know what the cost was for the people that did the change in the roundabouts? Was it like $1,000? Was it $2,000? Do you remember what that was?
I think it was more than that. I don't know it off the top of my head, but I have all that.
And they were a consultant then with the road commission?
Yeah.
You tell me that? And did they have staff here looking at it, or did they just look at the plans?
I don't know that they were ever here. I think they did conference calls at the design
plans,
meetings. Yeah, I don't know that
Okay.
they may have attended one meeting in design, but.
And could that be done in this fashion as well?
Certainly, I think if you
Yeah, I don't think we would
you
have
have
one.
mentioned Stewart and Newell, if we have, I guess setting an amount or a set of funds that this committee has to work with, and then if we need to call them, we call them.
Scott?
A couple comments, some of which you've already stated. I agree with the schedule. I like the item to have a timeline associated with it. I'd also like to have a cost not to exceed associated with it. I agree with Paul's comment about the participation of the Sheriff's Department. With all due respect, I don't see that as necessary. It's a little bit of the tail wagging the dog here. So I think if we focus on the fire station, that's going to be a big enough task. And lastly, with respect to the participation of the various architects, Zach has often used the term value engineering, and council may not realize this, but that is a discipline unto itself. It's not just something you do. There are firms out there that actually do nothing but value engineering. And the process is a formal one in which a group of subject matter experts are convened to review a design over a period of time and critique, essentially, the design and find ways to reduce costs. Now, I'm not saying we have to follow that process. I participated as a subject matter expert on a Corps of Engineers value engineering project, and it was being sequestered for 3 days in Chicago. And that was an expedited one. So I don't think we need to do that. But my point is that...
You like out to eat?
Yeah, we ate. We actually had a beer at the end of the day. You know me.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go to that level on this project.
Right.
But to finish my point, you know, if we have David participate in the primary committee, then we can convene a group later to review that, what comes out of that, and offer suggestions. So I don't think that, I agree with the chief, having 2 architects in there at the same time, I think would be maybe counterproductive.
Along with that, you know, one of the things we saw with Ken, you know, was the difference in construction engineering.
Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, some of that has to be looked at at the design level, but then, you know, there is a time where then you start looking at, you know, the construction, and, you know, the timeline of construction can vary depending on how you're planning to construct the structure.
And we hadn't even gotten there yet.
No,
You know.
I mean, but, you know, the design level and stuff, you know, that all would have to be incorporated at some point in time. Right now, we're concerned more about, you know, what's going to be included in there, so. But I think that's a good point that down the road, we're going to have to be looking at that.
So let me jump in now. So, you know, I appreciate that, I think Zach, the way you put it is, started with the first thing, let's see if we can come up with a committee. At the same time, part of that motion is to ask staff to go back and actually get a proposal. So, right?
Well,
To bring back-
or we can say not to exceed X, $4,000, for example.
Okay, well, I think you're, I think that you're guessing at a number that's way out of your understanding for what you're asking for here with a scaled site plan, scaled building plans, some basic elevations, 3D residence. I mean, he's only as good as the amount of time you're going to want him to spend.
Well, so we could, for $20,000, we got 2 years worth of his time and 2 sets of scaled building plans and site plans, right? Over 2 years. So I expect over a month, we're probably not going to spend a lot of his time. He's probably got a lot of these already on CAD. He's already got the site.
All right, so you're trying to go forward with a number as a part of this right now then, is that what you're saying?
Well, if that's
not part of the motion yet.
If that's what makes folks more comfortable.
Well, the second thing that I want to say, back to the, and I'm not saying it should be Newell, but using Courtney's parallel with Orston, they weren't just value engineering the design, they were justifying the need of the design. Meaning they took the traffic loads and the number of truck trips and the number of turning movements and helped make sure that the need, okay, was being accommodated in the design. I'd like to know relative to this project, I'm not convinced that we need 5 bays. Now, he may be, okay? But I want to know where that part of it is challenged in this, because what we heard from the residents at the town hall meeting is it's an awfully big thing to be building when 70% are going out of the community. And maybe build something of a certain size and make it expandable, or whatever the so I think there needs to be at least an introduction or review of that need, and really it should be done in concert with our partner communities. I mean, there's another station design going on around the block. And how many total bays do we need?
So is your argument we can't go forward with our station until Webster's Township has completed theirs?
Well, I think that there's some sense in us waiting to see what they end up building. Truthfully, I've said that publicly, but
They wait to see what we do to build what they're going to build?
I think we should be talking about the overall need within the district that we're in, and I don't know where that fits into this. Is all. I mean, if we're jumping from, if the jumping off point is the 5 bays and whatever, then we're still in a vacuum.
Yeah, and that's why I originally proposed a national expert, because they would like to double check those with fresh set of eyeballs. And while I appreciate your perspective as a representative on the DAFD board, I was elected to serve Dexter City, not Webster Township or Dexter Township. And I don't want to delay things that benefit the public safety of our citizens for them to figure out what they're going to do with their stormwater.
Well, I'm not suggesting we delay it. I'm suggesting we talk to them, which would be a unique step that we could take that neither one of the other 2 communities has. And I think we should be talking. That's why I think the council rep that was proposed, frankly, I think should be Jim, since he sits on the DFD board and has an interest in building a new station. I think we need to increase the communication of what's going on here to get to the real needs of what we're trying to do. Because I think that's gotten lost in this.
If I may, fortunately, I'm the consultant on the Webster station, and that floor plan, that design is done. It's being worked through. I guess we're at the stage right now where we're actually finishing up the site plan there to make sure that the building's sited. But the size of the building, the components of the building, that's all done. They're past that. They did call in another individual, kind of like Newell. They used a different individual out of New York for just a couple of meetings, and him and I were kind of on the same parallel with this stuff. And that guy's kind of not being consulted anymore because we've got the floor plan laid out. And that is going to be a 2-bay station, maybe even 2.5 bays. There's some additive bids onto that. But I'm sure Webster Township wouldn't mind me sharing information with you. But again, is all the things that you're talking about are the things that I've looked at and done in your concepts about why you need 5 bays, why you need a classroom, why you need offices. It's all out there.
Yeah, but so let's dig into that a little more then, as we're talking. So, you know, the agreement says that the main station should be in the city. You know, it doesn't define what that is. We've all got our own concept of what that is. It doesn't say training, it doesn't say chief's office, it just says the main station. Okay, then it's up to interpretation.
And tradition.
And tradition. Okay, fair enough, which is important.
Absolutely.
But if you look at the run data, okay, for the last year and a half, the far majority of the calls are in the townships.
Well, let me weigh in on that.
Well, hold on, I'm speaking, please. I'll give you your turn. Just let me finish. Wait. The increased runs are in Webster and Dexter Township. And I think there's some real logic in thinking about that. I mean, where should the trucks be? Where should the most vehicles be? Now, you can still have this chief's office here if you want, or have a training room or whatever. I'm not against some of that stuff, if you know, that's all part of it. But I think we're fooling ourselves if we think that all the vehicles should be here, and our 4,500 or 5,000 residents should bear the cost of stacking 10 vehicles here, when 70% of the runs, and that percentage is going up based upon the numbers I've seen, are not here in the city. We're already moving this thing further away from that if we build it on this site. Okay, I've talked about that. You know, in the month of July, there were 80-some runs out of 110 roughly. 80-some runs that were in Dexter Township and Webster Township. They each had over 40 runs in the month. We had 28. Okay, they're 40 plus. That's more than 2 trips, almost 3 trips a day. That's going to be going up Dexter Ann Arbor Road and either cutting through the neighborhood somehow to get to Central, or going under the viaduct, through town and under the viaduct. Well, yeah, but they don't, no, they don't do that. They go straight under the viaduct, or they, you know. It's more direct to Central now than it is coming off of Dexter Ann Arbor Road to cut down 5th, Inverness, whatever it is. It's just more direct.
But they are required to drive onto your entire 2 blocks of Main Street that's signaled with the lights.
What's that?
They have, it's the most congested portion of the street. It's more direct but more congested.
Yeah, I'm just saying that I'm just saying that you're directing. We're talking about designing a station for the majority, more than 50% of the vehicles. And I don't know that that makes sense. I don't know that it makes sense for the 5,000 residents, if we're up to that, at the census count, to pay for that big a station. Okay, I get the whole, we should do the best for the city of Dexter. I'm good with that. I'm ran on that too. Okay, but we're in this as a team group in a partnership and have been now for 20-some years. And somebody ought to be looking at the data and making data-driven decisions on this. And that's where I go back to the need thing. You heard Joe talk about it a little bit. Okay, well, I'm just saying, if we're going into this committee, I don't want to give up on the importance of some of those things, because I don't think we need to build a station the size of the one that's being built in Portage or Kalamazoo or whatever, at 20,000 square feet, when 70% of the runs aren't even here.
And just roughly, how many of the runs are medical?
About 75, 80%.
75. And if it's a minor medical run out of Dexter Township, is it Dexter Township Station responding?
And the city station.
They all
Let me, I'll explain some of this when I get a chance. I don't want to interrupt.
So I just want, like I said, I'm asking, I don't know, I think that needs to be considered. The concept needs to be challenged from a need perspective.
Give me out after she put me,
Thank you for waiting.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I wouldn't expect anybody here to understand service delivery and how we provide that service and where we put our stuff. We are data-driven, completely data-driven. Everything we do is about data and how we provide the service. So that's been looked at. I've looked at it. I've provided the numbers over and over. Let me go to the 70% number. All right, the 70% number is not true. It's not accurate at all. Okay, we run. If you looked at the budgets for the last 3 years, the 3 municipalities roughly paid 33, 35%, somewhere in there. They all pay about the same. All right, so you're correct that maybe 70% of the calls are in Webster and Dexter Township. But if I go to Dexter Township and look at it, 70% of the calls are in the city and Webster Township. And if I go to Webster Township, 70% are in Dexter and Dexter City, okay? So the numbers, you can't just say that 70% of the calls are outside of here, because that still leaves 30% here, which is pretty even split, okay? So when you run the numbers, in fact, I ran the numbers, and I believe I provided Paul Cousins with some of those numbers, is that if you actually took the calls for the last 2 years from where we're at right now, and you looked at it from, and I'm sorry I didn't bring the whole packet, but you look at it from the MAV site, had we been located at the MAV site, we would have been 95 fewer calls through the heart of the city from the MAV site than we did today. Because every call that we run in the city and every call that we run in Webster Township goes through the heart of the city. The only thing that doesn't go through the heart of the city is the Dexter Township calls. From the MAV site, we wouldn't have to go through the city for Webster Township calls. We would turn off on Central Street before we get to the heart of the city, right? Or we can go through some of those neighborhoods, right? And the majority of the calls in the city of Dexter are actually on the other side of the downtown heart. So for 70% of the calls now, I don't have to go through that 1 mile stretch, right? I still have to for Dexter Township, so we really swap Dexter for Webster, but the city calls, the predominant, most of them, or more, a majority of them, I don't have to go down through downtown anymore. So the numbers got to be looked, we're data driven, we look at that, okay? We look at response times, and the response times from a MAV site throughout the city are improved if we're at the MAV site from where we are right now, for the city. I'm not gonna try to push it off and say that it's gonna be better for Webster Township, or excuse me, Dexter Township, because we know that's not the case. We're gonna have to go through the city, so their response times will be reduced a little bit. Webster, however,
Increased.
I don't have to go through the city, so we're gonna not go through all those lights. So Dexter City and Webster Township, at least a good portion of it, are gonna see better response times than they do today. 70% of the calls are gonna see better response times than they do today by being at the MAV site. Again, we are data driven, right? Everything that I look at is data driven from the time an alarm goes off until the guys get in the trucks, until we get on the road, until we get at the site. That's what you pay me to do. Right? That's what you pay me to do, is to look at that. I've put it out there over and over, and I hear these numbers being put out there, and I just get a little frustrated at it because the data's there. It's there. I am your subject matter expert if you want to do the value engineering. You know, I'm the one that's looking at, hey, if we put these rooms next to each other, we can make some training things, or we can make it a little cheaper by doing that. I'm looking at that every day. We're not just throwing square footage rooms on a board and see where they're landing. There's a lot of work going into this as a public safety officer. So that's just my spiel. It's frustrating to see numbers being jacked around and not portrayed accurately. So I'm sorry.
There's been a lot of people saying needs versus wants without exact specifics aside from the size of the building. Some folks have said we don't need training rooms or classrooms, that let the other folks deal about it, we don't have it now. One of the questions raised today was how would this new building at a new site improve our responses? My understanding is that training is part of the department's ISO rating, is that correct?
It is. Every facet that we put into the building is there for a reason. Now, there's no one code, and I think I showed you guys that, there's no one code that you can go to that says that what you have to have in a fire station, right? But there is my OSHA standards, uniform build design guide that's out there that makes recommendations for a fire station. And what you really have to look at is, all right, I'm going to provide fire services, so what do I need to do for that? Well, I need to train. Right? So how big of a classroom do you need, or what type of training things do you need to do? We have to have fire trucks. For each fire truck, there has to be a door, 14 foot wide, 14 foot tall, 4 foot in between the trucks, 4 foot in between the front and the back of the truck, so we have to have a certain amount of square footage for that. We have to clean our bunker gear. OSHA says we have to do that. So how do we do that? Well, we got to just have so many square foot to put in the appropriate equipment that we need to be able to decontaminate our gear. It's all done through what are we doing for operations that drives that. And if you tell me that, hey chief, what can you cut out? I say, what don't you want to do? I mean, if you need to build a building for today and meet the generally recognized standards for today, or you're not going to be building a 50 to 75 year building. If you don't meet the codes of today and you only meet the codes and the requirements of 10 or 12 years ago, you've automatically cut 10 or 12 years off the life of this building, and I don't think that would be prudent for the taxpayers. So it's really based on operations.
Where did the figure come from, build the 75 year versus a 50 year versus a 35 year building? Where does that come from?
That's a desire of you, the board.
Okay.
What do you want to do? And I generally, in the past, I've looked at a 30 to 40 year building, right? But boards nowadays want to get a lot more time out of it. They're expensive buildings. They're probably the most complicated, expensive buildings that you could build. And so they want them to last a long, long time. The challenge from my perspective is I've got to predict what we're going to be doing in 50 years and build it right today. And I don't want to lead you down the road and say, hey, this building is going to last 50 years, knowing that we don't have everything in it we need to. And so I'm very careful about putting that out there. I would rather, if the board wants a 50-year building, then obviously we probably want to put 4 bunk rooms in it, not 2. We want to have enough bay space that, hey, ladder trucks are getting bigger, tankers are getting bigger. We know that in the future, so we got to program that in, and there's a balance between that and what you have to spend. And I try to be prudent with that for you. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does, thank you.
Paul, and then I'll come back to Zach.
Sean, I guess I need to understand, did you say that the reduction of bays here in the city would have to be picked up by the townships on the outside if we were talking not about a 10 bays here, but that those could be stored in other areas, or that they could provide space for those in other townships, in 2 other townships? Is that what I'm hearing? What I heard you say?
What I am suggesting is that we have not, at least since 2015, when I've been on DAFD, we have not had a discussion about how do we best serve the community that we're all paying into, that fire community, that emergency response area. We have not had a conversation about how to best serve it. And, the population projections show more growth in the townships than they do in the city, which is, in my mind, going to lead to more runs because there's more people. It's all population based. And, it just seems odd to me that in the areas that are likely to grow the most and have the most runs out of the district, remember, think 50 years, 75, if that's what we're doing, or 35, any number you want, but I think that, you might see a model that has that needs more vehicles and people there than here. I mean, we're slowly, this fire department has slowly been coming out of the dark ages of we're not going to put any money into it. Okay, that's what was done for a long time in this fire department. Okay, and the people that are on that board previously, some of them still sitting there today, don't want to spend any more nickels than they have to say they have a fire department.
Agreed.
Okay, now I think I know we are, we're a little more progressive, although I applaud Dexter Township for building the station that they built. But what I'm suggesting is that I think we ought to have a discussion about the response protocol. I mean, I think he's a pretty smart guy there, okay? And I think that there's more than one way to provide service in responding to whether it's emergency runs, okay, or fire runs, no matter what the percentage of them is. We can debate that, and it's different every year or whatever. But the trends are that there's going to be more people there. That population is going to be larger, and it just seems odd to have, if 5 full bays of equipment here when the majority of the runs are not here.
Well, then I'll
okay, now I think we need to have enough bays to meet the needs of our residents. I mean, we need to have enough bays to meet the needs of our residents. I don't disagree with there. I mean, it's not one. I'm not suggesting that we back in the truck somewhere with one. That's not what I'm saying. But I think that somewhere we need to have that conversation and understand what the long-term plans of that is or are, and how we fit into it. Because otherwise, I think you're potentially overbuilding.
If I may, going all the way back to the original concept document that I provided to you on this, those evaluations were done. I did. Why do we need majority of the apparatus down here? It's really pretty simple. Is the majority of our employees are down here, and if I put them out at the township stations where I only have one full-time there, I would be putting an engine and a tanker out there. Then somebody from the downtown area has got to go all the way out there and get it to take it to another community. I look at the employee base too, and where is the highest potential for our firefighters to live? And it's closer to the heart or the core of Dexter City. Therefore, we want the majority of our equipment there, the equipment that makes sense to be here, so that guys can pick it up faster and get it to the scene faster and not have to go all the way out to Webster to take a piece of equipment over to Dexter Township. So I did look at those, and I made that recommendation that those tankers, while yes, they're gonna get used out in the townships more, but I don't have anybody pick them up out there, or very few. And so that's why the recommendation is to have them here. So those numbers have been looked at, those evaluations have been made. I made my recommendation, and I accept Sean's questioning of it, but at some point it comes down to, you know, hey, how do we actually operate the department, and what is the workflow? What happens when an alarm comes in? What's the fastest way to get stuff to everybody in the municipality? And yes, the city does get the brunt of it, because that's where our work base is. That's where we'll call it the main station is. That's where we need to be able to do the most things to support the 2 outside stations. But, you know, if I start putting stuff out in those township stations and they're needed in the city, it hurts the city tremendously, because somebody's got to drive from down here out there to pick it up and bring it back. And I know it's a numbers game. And I can sit here today and we can lay it all out. The first run we get, it don't work. But the numbers, the potential is there, the reasoning's there for that evaluation. I'd be glad to sit down and talk all day. I love talking fire service and service delivery. But it's not as easy as just say, hey, let's park a truck here and park a truck there, and you know, and another thing is, I guess, going to the employee growth. All right, the 2 township stations at the most for the next 15 years or 20 years, my projection would be that they're going to have 1 person out there. Once we get 1 person out there, the next group of people that come in would be at the main station. Why not? I mean, that's where we got the most equipment at too. And I can get more people on the road and provide a better service by having that equipment there. The fast attack engines out in the townships can do what they need to do, so that I got the stuff coming from downtown with adequate people to meet 2 in, 2 out, to meet our rescue, rapid intervention requirements, and get the proper amount of water on the fire ground as quickly as I can. It's more efficient and more effective running it out of the downtown station, even though you don't use tankers. But that's my job, to provide that, and I'm doing that, trying to do that.
If I finish my thoughts now, I don't disagree with that. We were way behind in the late 90s and the early 2000s with the fire department and their response to adequately service the city, townships at that time as well. Everybody knows that. The facts that are, though, is that we can talk and have meetings all we want about what should be done. But those are independent unit of governance that in many cases don't rely on the fire department for their decision making. They rely on the citizens to tell them and elect them about how much money they want to spend. And they decided that they were going to spend the amount of money in Dexter Township to put the fire department where they should have put it. And they moved it away from most of the population there and made it more difficult.
They cut the east side of Portage Lake out of the magic number for reduced insurance.
Correct. And they did that because they wanted to save money. And as I've had John Sharf, and I heard recently in the Cap Dart meeting, that Dexter Township, or that Webster Township is still on an edge, a knife's edge of where they're going to do. Are they going to build this or not? The township supervisor even said that they're not sure they're going to build it because they don't want to spend that much money. So if they're only going to put 2 bays out there now, they're not going to build 3 or 4 for the future. That goes without saying, okay? It isn't going to happen. So the question is then the bigger, larger decision has to be made about who's going to provide that. And since we're the main station, and it does fall on us maybe harder than it does the others, I don't know that yet. I do know that the facts, the figures that you're right, Sean, there's more growth out there. but they are not recognizing that at all for spending money now to solve that problem in the future.
And not so much growth in Webster Township, they're projected to be very slow.
They're trying not to grow.
Yeah, actually, I have a follow-up question for the training. Offhand, do you know what the ISO rating with respect to training is for the department?
Firefighters are under ISO, we're rated against getting 24 hours of training per month per firefighter.
And where are we at?
6.
6, so we're way below.
Well, way below that.
And if we had opportunities for more training, either in the classroom or within the facility or on the grounds, that would be improved?
I would say that we would have more efficient, more effective training, better training. The part of the reason that our numbers are low is because we do have paid-I-call folks, and I have to recognize that this is their volunteer job, and if I put too many requirements on them and say, hey, you got to be here 24 hours a month, I'm going to lose every one of them. Okay? On the other side of that is, if I don't provide good, decent training facilities, it's shown that volunteers will dwindle as well, because they don't feel that they're getting the training they need, or that their communities are really investing in them. So it's kind of a double-edged sword there. The training facilities that we need to have here, as I've recommended, is enough to put about 45 to 50 people into a classroom. One of the training things that we're supposed to do is train with our neighbor departments. We don't do much of that because I haven't got a classroom I can put them in. And even the one at Dexter Township isn't big enough for that type of stuff. Plus, it's out in a very remote area that you know, most of the employees and most of the equipment, there's logistical things. But really, I'd like a classroom that would do that. I could be able to do some quality training in there, and then have those value engineered training props that Ken talked to you about built in as a very minor cost.
So would it be an accurate statement that the inclusion of training ability within their classroom and the other props helps with retention of volunteers, so there's less cost having to get those people and there's better staff?
Very much so.
And because we're better ISO rating, people's fire insurance should go down. And when firefighters arrive on the scene, they're more likely to be able to respond more quickly and more appropriately.
Yeah, I'm very careful with the ISO because it's so hard to get there. There's so many things that go into that. Training is one of them. The number of personnel is one of the biggest ones. Whether you have a ladder truck in your build-up area is a large one. What are your response times from a data-driven perspective? What can you show? And how quickly are you getting firefighters and the appropriate amount of water on the scene? That all comes into play with ISO. So there's plenty there. But I couldn't say that any one thing. I'm going to be very hesitant and say that, hey, training's going to get us a better rating. That's not going to happen. It's going to be a combination of better training means safer firefighters, means more efficient operations, means that we have reduced fire losses. So it all plays in there to help you with the numbers. The fact is, you have to train, so you have to have the facilities. Jim?
I'd just like to ask Zach on the motion. As far as the planning committee, why don't we set that up so that the committee can then call in the sheriff's representative at an appropriate time.
Yeah, that would be my understanding.
At every meeting.
Yeah, that would be my understanding.
And then, would you consider adding, requesting staff, do a proposal request from Partners in Architecture? And have the proposal back for the next meeting? And then, David and the chief and Courtney can talk about what the scope of the proposal would be.
And the schedule, because David could tell us, make sure that it works within the schedule. Because it could still potentially be the second meeting in September or the first meeting in October, even if we wait till the 22nd or 24th or whatever our next meeting is.
Well, then, before I answer that question for the city manager, we've previously thrown a lot of spaghetti at Mr. Gasson, right, where we've said, go figure out this site, go figure out this site, go figure out that site. we didn't necessarily have a proposal or any signed contract that we're going to pay you this.
Not after the original.
Not after the original. Would it be unnerving for you to not have it in this situation, being that it's similar to what we've done in the past? Or is it something that you would want to do or something we should have done?
Yeah, I'm thinking more along the lines of, I wish I would have done it more, but we were always sort of like, wanted something for the next meeting or wanted something for the next, so I think we got away from it a little bit, which is unusual for us and the board in general. Like normally we know what stuff's gonna cost as we go instead of kind of at the end. So that was on me and all of us really, that we were just doing the town hall meeting and then we were doing this and then it was like Copeland and St. Joe's and
Would you be comfortable if we had a not to exceed point, and if it exceeds that, bringing back proposal at the next meeting?
Or I mean, you could start it, I guess, with a not to exceed, and then if that was vastly different, we could always change it.
Okay, well.
Either way. I don't know what the number would be necessarily.
Do you recall, I'll look at the financial guru, she's still here, sorry. What we spent the most recent invoice for Mr. Gasson on the 2 sets of fancy plans?
Well, the 20,000 included everything he had done in the past
Including
year,
the
so I don't
storyboards.
remember the exact. It was in a packet, I guess we could pull up, but I don't remember exactly what, was travel versus time versus, But like you said, I mean, we're not starting from scratch. I mean, we had extensive meetings with David on these very plans, so.
Would you, Mr. Smith, say not to exceed 4,000, and if it's more than that, then come back with a proposal at the next meeting?
What, are you saying if it's less than that, go ahead and start?
Yep.
I would probably bump it up a little from that.
5,000?
5 or 6,
Let's keep it 5. Nice. Are we amending that into the motion?
If you're putting it in, I'll second.
Okay. Could the chair read back the motion, our motion to us?
I think it's a motion to establish a committee to work on the fire station / police station, which encompasses the DAFD chief, a junior member of the DAFD staff, sheriff as needed now, sheriff representative as needed, the architect firm of David Gaston and Courtney. Okay, there's still a question of whether we're having a council member or not. With an authorization of $5,000 to get the project, to get the effort started, and you can have Courtney bring back whatever she needs to after that to clarify if it ends up being more.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And I'd let the committee decide whether they feel they need a council person to come in at any point in time. Otherwise, they can just decide to give us an update at any particular point in time they feel is necessary. And then to get the proposal, right? Have staff work on getting the proposal.
And right now, this is just fire, right?
This is fire / police.
Right.
Little nuggets.
Sorry.
I didn't want us to eat too much of a steak at once.
And I'm assuming this applies to the property on Dexter Arbor Road.
Yes.
Paul?
I support what's there. I also feel that there's the other part of it that Zach had put out there, which was about the city hall. I would make a motion after that, when it was voted on, that we have a workshop at the next meeting to talk about city hall location.
So let's vote on this. And then we'll,
But I just want to let that go by without having that out there, that's a motion that I'd be willing to put out. I think it's pertinent that we divide it. It was all one set of plans that Zach put out.
I'm going to throw out there on the page 161, the top of that, it has kind of some general policy statements for what we want in the concept plan, and I don't think any of them is too outrageous. I did want to clarify on 6 that it would be to the extent practical. Everyone knows there's a dearth of public meeting spaces, and so if there's a way to design it to allow for whoever to use the space, that would be a benefit to the community.
let's talk about these when we
Different?
talk
Okay.
about the proposal.
All right.
Next time.
Gonna make me type something else up?
Yeah, probably.
Dang it. Well, staff's got these now, right? There you go.
Okay, so do I need to repeat the motion, or does everybody understand what it is?
And it now includes the cost not to exceed, did I hear?
Yep.
And it includes,
5,000.
and I didn't hear a specific schedule. What did we talk about?
The proposal will be due next meeting.
Okay.
And that will.
And then from there,
It'll be-
we'll know David's schedule and his ability to either come in at the...
So we're not authorizing this committee to begin anything until council reviews the proposal from David? Is that what we're doing?
That's not what I understood.
That doesn't
No,
sound like-
we can start.
I thought the motion was to establish the committee of 5, give them a $5,000 not to exceed, and then staff's going to work over the next 2 weeks to bring back a more defined proposal, and so that the committee could meet if they wanted to.
And at that time, we'll have a schedule.
Right. Next meeting.
With the idea that the schedule
Maybe
is to
we'll
be
be done.
done by October 1.
Right.
That's the ideal schedule, right?
First meeting.
Ideally, yeah.
Yeah, whatever.
Ideally, yes, which shouldn't be an issue, I don't think.
Or
Right.
earlier.
Everybody understands the motion? Please call the vote. Ms. Jones?
Bell?
Yes.
Michelle's?
Yes.
Knight?
Yes.
Cousins?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Fisher?
Yes.
Keo?
No.
Can we take that?
Yes, we can.
Crack boundaries.
Okay, we are still on, I believe we're still on item L3.
Yes.
I move establishment of design committee.
Yep,
To work on a new design for City Hall at 8140. We can discuss who gets on that team. My idea for putting this together is I heard at, well, I guess I'll just leave the motion there, and then if it gets a second, I'll say why.
I'll second.
Okay, so motion by Michelle, second by Cousins.
Yep. So what I heard at the most recent meeting is there are a lot of people and talking with folks around that site is kind of a sacred site. I think someone actually used the term sacred site. Well, I'm personally more comfortable doing other things because I think we can have control on it. I think we ought to investigate another way to use the site for City Hall. So we do have plans already prepared for reusing the current building, but my recollection is it's just shy of $3 million, which seems very, very high when you pencil out what it would be at 3045 Broad, the square footage and the cost for new construction is like 1.7 million, give or take. So the idea would be we get another kind of little group together and say, what could this site look like for City Hall if we don't reuse that building? If we move it more towards the curb so it matches the town and that type of idea. So that was my concept with doing this, or with proposing this, spaghetti.
So your premise is that we would demolish the existing structure?
Yes, based on the fact that the remodel estimate to turn it into a city hall is $3 million, which is a lot
Do you
more.
know how much the cost to demolish that building is?
I asked Courtney that, if she could come up with that thing. Yesterday, did I ask her that, or last
Last week
Friday?
you did, but and I said if council's comfortable with that, Blue Star's in town demolishing something at the plant, we could ask them to give us a ballpark, I guess. I didn't do it.
And it was mostly because if you look at the estimates for remodeling, it was literally $3 million and 1.7 to do brand new construction. So I figured, let's see what a new thing could look like there.
And we do on the site.
Yeah.
So I don't have any problem establishing a committee to think about things, but to focus them on one site, I think is way premature, considering I think we have more than one. And I don't think we've had, I think the public wanted to hear more about both sites, not just one. There was a lot of things said. Some of it might have been that it's a sacred site, but I don't think in the same sentence that somebody said it's a sacred site and it should have City Hall. what they ultimately said was, whatever the use is there, you better be darn sure you do something right with it.
Yeah.
That was the implication, so.
You've raised concerns about reducing the taxable base, and if we build a 1.6, 1.7 million build out in 3045 Broad, that's reducing our taxable base for the DDA by $800,000. So I wanted to, and we know what the square footage is.
But not when you're bringing online a 3-story or 4-story building. That's not.
So that building doesn't work at all without us as a tenant is the presumption. I think the building works without us as tenants. So the idea is, we have a basic idea of the square footage there, and how exactly that gets laid out is relatively easy. How you site a building in a place like this with the topography and the street line and the park is a bit trickier than just filling in white finish, wall finish. You know, we threw together in a week Mr. Jackson's basic plan for what it would look like in the monument building. So new construction is relatively easy versus placing a new structure on a site, especially such a hilly site.
You just want, if we're going to be bringing stuff forward for the public again to evaluate, I want to keep options even.
So, I made a second.
Well, because there was a lot of discussion about you know, other options for 8140 other than city offices.
Yeah.
And we haven't had that discussion. I'm just saying that the committee should have a broader focus than one site if we're going to do that.
So, knowing that you prefer the other site, what will you do with 8140?
I haven't gotten there yet. I'm not ready to move the fire station.
Well, that's the whole point. I knew the answer before I asked the question.
Okay, well, you're a genius then. So you're,
no, I'm not a
you should have
genius.
been a lawyer.
I just know you're.
But there were some good ideas. I mean, there were some good ideas thrown out. It could be a community meeting room. The police could stay there. You could expand the police there. There's all sorts of things to do it. I haven't gone that far with it because I want to have the discussion about options. I've always wanted to have options, but we tend to just make up our mind before we even get an option flushed out.
Well, this option hasn't even been flushed the first time.
I think there is a option that David did that has a new building there.
On that present site.
On that present site.
Right.
There was, because there's one that moved it all the way up to the front.
That was the...
It's either B or C.
No, I don't remember what the cost was.
The massive building with everything in it, right?
That's what I said, there's more to it.
No, it was just city office.
I think it was just
There was
city
a couple
office,
different ones, but I mean, yeah, obviously some more stuff needs to be done, but I don't think it would be hard to have David do a floor plan for 3045 Broad at the same time. I mean, he has all the data.
Might as well.
Right.
At least then we have.
We're comparing it.
Well, I'm not into the 35 Broad Street yet until I find out more of the details. Okay, if we're honest with each other, that came about only after the discussion of the committee with them, and then the council heard it after that. We didn't hear it even close to simultaneous, and only when we had a meeting with them.
That's not true. I've been talking about 3045 Broad for a year or more.
Yes,
That's
you're absolutely
absolutely
right.
not
You haven't talked about 3045 Broad, but you've been talking about it at the ATCO site, not at the other site. And not buying additional houses that we're tearing down and taking tax dollars off, and then have to put them back, I got that. And putting in a parking structure, which we haven't even had that discussion about. I don't know if it's for the people in the...
Paul, you're right in the middle of the discussion. And you're the same one who doesn't want to talk about it. It's funny to listen to you. When I bring up the discussion, you're mad that we're having the discussion.
I'm not mad.
And then when we're not talking about it, you want to find any way not to talk
Point
about
of order,
it. It's both sides of the mouth. It's ridiculous.
Point of order, Council rules say we're talking about discussions,
If you
not
do it
about...
again, I'm going to call you out on it, okay? Do not use the word ridiculous in anybody in this council speaking, please.
I apologize.
Thank you.
I apologize. But you can't pretend we haven't talked about it. That's not true. You're just saying things that aren't true then. And there was no clear delineation from the meetings we've had that city offices should just be at 8140.
say that.
So, I mean, it merits discussion to carry more than one option or to look at different options here. Julie?
Pertaining to the motion, I am not in favor of demolishing that building. I think that's part of our history in the city of Dexter, and I think I'm in favor of renovating it for city offices. I think we can scale down the dollar amount that we came up with, but I am not in favor of demolishing that building. So I would not vote for that.
Would you be interested in at least seeing what it looks like? Since the only historic thing is the foundation.
I guess my point, Zach, is, you know, with the fire station, it's easy to ask the committee to go forward because you got one site that you're dealing with, and you know where that site is and what you're trying to expand upon. You got one concept you're building from. With this topic and this committee, I think you need a little broader purview, not just doing one thing. If you want to look at a cost and a scale concepts for a new thing there, I'm okay with hearing that. But I think that that's like creating a third option. Option one is the renovation, and there might be a better way to do that, as Julie's suggesting, or Jim, I think, is suggesting. Option two might be a new site there, and option three is a new site on the other. And then the same committee could be involved in bringing back all that data to this project.
To make a motion to amend. I put it together because this is the piece that as I look at it, doesn't exist yet. We know how much it's going to cost to go in 3045. We know what renovating the building is going to cost. We don't know what the new building there essentially would cost. So it's filling out the matrix. As you said, option A, we renovate. We know what that's roughly going to look at and cost. Option B, at 3045 Broad, we know the square footage we're going to get, how much that's going to cost per square foot, and we know we can fit stuff in there. This option, we don't really know, except for an old plan that hasn't seen the light of day for years and years. So that's why I thought it would be valuable for the public discussion.
And before the committee gets going on it, I think council should still have a work session like Paul was going to propose there, to where council has, you know, an opportunity to voice their opinion and talk about these different options and stuff, so that then, you know, we could give the committee some perspective of where council is. Yeah.
I think our vote says that.
Isn't that what we're doing now?
No, I don't think so. Right? Because I think there's just a lot of, you know, stuff that can get thrown out in a discussion, work session to, you know, there's so many things that we don't necessarily cover here in a meeting that, you know, could be out there and discussed. And, you know, we may ask to have somebody from Northville come again and talk to us in the work session. You know, so I think the first step should be a work session, and then we consider going with a committee. That's my opinion.
And we'd have a next meeting and move forward, and we wouldn't be behind anything in the plannings because we've already got the fire process side moving. We can do this even a month behind it or later.
So are you proposing we postpone the motion on establishing the committee and we have a work session on the August 26th meeting?
Sure. I'll second that.
Motion Smith, second Cousins, all right, to postpone establishing committee and have a work session on August 20, before the August 26th meeting?
Yeah, either August or depending on the agenda and stuff, either the second meeting in August or first meeting in September, whichever works best.
It should be fine for the second meeting in August.
Okay, second meeting in August.
There's a point of order, doesn't the original proposer need to amend
Not
this?
for a motion to postpone.
Nope, postpone has precedence. It's the king of motions. this.
So on the next agenda, that motion, the motion that was just made by Michelle's, the first one will be on the agenda as a, postponed from today.
Yeah, it's old business.
Right.
Or is it unfinished business, what it's actually supposed to be called?
Of course, the motion to postpone needs support. Oh, you did support. Thank you.
15 minutes.
Does everybody understand the motion to postpone? Please call the vote, Carol.
Knight?
Yes.
Fisher?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Cousins?
Yes.
Bell?
Yes.
Michelle's?
Yes.
Keo?
Yes. Is there anybody you want at that meeting?
I wouldn't mind having a representative from there, just so we can, if we have questions, and we don't have to wait and do another meeting where we have to bring them in.
Do you want a representative for partners?
Yep.
Sure.
And if it's possible, you can ask them for demolition.
Yeah, I like that too.
That would be useful.
And if that company, I don't know how big they are, how small they are, but, Andy, you know how big they are? Have they done,
Yeah, they've done demos for us before.
I mean, but have they done a big one?
Yeah, I imagine they're a big company.
I also know Trustee Lesser of Dexter Township was actually responsible for demolishing the grist mill that was on top of the foundation back in the day. So maybe
Did you see we get that?
hook it up with the tractor.
This thing is built like a parking garage,
Oh, yes.
so
70-inch thick.
it's not gonna be a cheap demo.
Yeah.
You don't even know the environmental.
What's that?
You don't know the environmental in that part.
Right, that doesn't factor that in.
All right, do we have any other business to do under L3?
No.
Okay, so new business item L4, consideration of resolution to approve ballot language for the November 5th, 2019 election.
I'll make a motion that the council decides that there is a future election on May 5th and that the February 11th is a deadline as recommended by our staff.
So basically, the information on page 163 to postpone the action on the ballot language.
Correct.
And make the goal the May 5th election.
So let me provide a quick update on that.
Sure.
Since I have the information since the memo.
Say a second.
So, he is a second, right? Paul made the motion and you seconded it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, we can put something on the presidential primary ballot potentially. That's a quicker deadline, so that would be March 10th unless the legislature changes it. Now keep in mind, the legislature has until like October to change the date. Currently, the date for ballot language would be December 17th.
For the May
For the
election?
May 10th, for the March 10th election.
Say it again, huh?
Oh,
March 10th, we'll have a presidential primary. We just got the information on it
March
today. So the deadline for ballot language for that is December 17th. Well, we don't know if all that could change because the legislature can still change the date of that election. So if you guys just make it a future election and then we can kind of keep abreast of that. You can tie it to an election if you want, but I just wanted you to be aware, we only got that today, that's the date that it is as of today.
I would say for now, let's leave it on the May, and as additional information comes, we can always go back and vote again and change it if we need to.
So you want to postpone discussion of ballot question until
So the legislature makes a decision.
until
Yeah.
February 1?
Well,
No, but
we're postponing the current discussion on it, and then the goal is to be ready by the appropriate date for the May 5th election.
So come up with old business, say 2 meetings before that?
That's right.
Yeah, so I would say the January meeting, first meeting in January should be the first discussion, and then we can pass the second January meeting.
that would be be preferable.
So we're postponing this consideration item to the first meeting in January.
Basically.
That's really the motion that's on there.
Right.
Everything else we control outside of this motion. So you're not tying.
Right.
Right, because if David comes back and says, I need 6 months to do it, you're going to define, like, there's other details that are affecting this, is what I'm saying.
Right.
For this item, we're just postponing it until the first meeting in January.
Right. Because the draft wording and stuff he gave us isn't going to change.
Not dramatically.
That makes sense, everybody?
Yep.
So it's motion by Cousins, second by Smith, to postpone the discussion of valid language until first meeting in January 2020.
That doesn't preclude, does it preclude us having something in March? Have we decided that?
Or you just
The date
bring
is
it back
17th?
earlier and say you want to do it earlier.
Once they decide on that.
What's that?
Once they decide on the election date.
Yeah,
That would be nice.
come back.
Revisit it.
That's it. I'm good with it.
Okay, please call, any further discussion needed on that? Please call the vote.
Cousins,
Yes.
Knight,
Yeah.
Bell,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Michelle's,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Keel.
Yes. New business item L5,
I
consider,
move that we purchase a remote control unit installation for an amount not exceeding $14,400 from UIS.
Support.
moved by Cousins, second by Bell, thank you both. Any update by staff or questions from council? Not trying to rush everybody, but it's 10:30.
Yeah, no, I would have put it on consent if I was thinking, I didn't.
Okay, please call the vote. No, it's okay, don't turn it down.
Knight,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Bell,
Yes.
Michelle's,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Cousins,
Yes.
Keel.
Yes. Motion carries. Council comments this evening, starting with Mr. Cousins, please.
Well, it's interesting that Mr. Summerfield has a short memory about a couple of things. It's interesting that he brought the idea up that we did the,
I don't believe he's
this-
here.
excuse me, Bella?
He said, is Joe here?
No, he's not here, but he
Okay.
made the comment, he made a remark in the meeting that we had the other night, he made the comments tonight, and I turned it off, okay?
Absolutely okay.
Thank you.
Just was wondering if you were here.
And so, the point is that he made a discussion about how the library was decided, and he's absolutely right how it was decided, but there was a difference in the amounts that were there. It was a amount of money for 10 acres for $100,000 that the Dexter schools were willing to sell that piece of property for, and it cost them over $600,000 to buy the houses and have them tore down. So 6 times as much. And took tax dollars off the rolls, which it didn't do with the schools, okay? And then he went on to talk about parking. And if you talk to anybody in the library today, that's one of the biggest issues is parking. So his memory is either flawed or faulting, because that was not a good deal money-wise, okay, is what his premise was as related to this discussion, okay? Not factual and what was needed, but what was money-wise, and that was his whole point.
Are you saying the city wanted, or the citizens wanted it downtown versus needed it downtown?
Whatever. I'm not walls and needs, I'm just talking about facts of the dollars and what the issue is now. And they've tried to buy other pieces of property along there, and there's nobody for sale at any reasonable cost.
Anything else?
That's it.
Okay. Mr. Bell?
Yeah, real briefly, I work in Ann Arbor, and this morning, 2 of my coworkers approached me, and knowing I live in Dexter, they both had the opportunity to visit Dexter over the weekend, and were effusive in their praise of Dexter. They thought one person lives in Saline, the other lives in Ann Arbor, and they were just, they couldn't stop saying good things about us. I wanted to make sure staff heard that and everybody here heard that, because, you know, in spite of the fact that we may have minor disagreements about things, overall, I think everybody's doing a hell of a good job here, so we should pat ourselves on the back for that.
Good.
Thank you.
And good weather was
Well,
part of it.
yeah, that never
Ms.
hurts.
Fisher?
No thanks for me tonight.
Ms. Jones?
I got a little history tidbit for you there. I'll keep it short. In 1907, at that time, the fire station was on Alpine Street. So they needed a new location. So what did they do? They put the building on skids and moved it down to Broad Street near the cemetery.
Is that an option? Can we?
Oh.
Yeah, well, I was just going to throw that out for one of your options and what there too. Unfortunately, the building burned in 1926.
Broad
But
Street near
The fire department burned down.
well, down on where Dapco and somewhere down that way.
Oh.
So that location. So.
Broad, we call that, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, the other end of Broad.
The other end of Broad.
Yep.
I thought that was
Thank
kind
you.
of neat.
Yes, it is.
Mr. Smith?
I'm good.
Ms. Knight?
Accounting, thank you.
All right, Cap Dart update. The group is looking to put together kind of a transportation forum with Representative Lizinski. October 19th, I believe it's a Saturday. Michigan plays at Penn State. We made sure it wasn't a home game. It's going to be at the Chelsea Senior Center. We're going to have representatives there from Transit, from WAVE. We're going to get someone there from probably Huron HWPI to talk about the biking and the trails, and someone from Road Commission to talk about roads. So we're going to kind of have the spiel, and then we're going to try to get feedback and information for folks for the various communities about what are challenges and things that you would like to see happen that aren't out there. As part of that, the different communities have been tasked with coming with a couple of priority projects in those 3 different categories to facilitate discussion, so people have something to point at maps and boards and that type of stuff. So I'll be bringing that up next meeting. As a reminder, if anyone has Facebook, they may have seen the "just because I disagree with you doesn't mean I hate you" meme that's been floated around. So as a reminder, Rule 6 of our council rules, conduct of discussion, includes the following. Council members shall listen to one another, debate issues, not persons, respect one another's views in spite of differences in opinion, respect the fact that we will not always agree on issues. Indeed, the diversity of views and perspective may strengthen our decision-making process. Members must abide by the decision of the council once a decision has been made, and resist the temptation when you disagree with the decision, try to undermine the decision. Continuing concerns about a decision should be expressed privately. So it's tough. We're out here slugging. We're very confident in what we think is best. Know that everyone here wants what's best for the community. We have different perspectives, different opinions, and that's what makes us stronger. If we all agreed on the same thing, big issues all the time, that'd be not as good decisions, I think. And I have tried to reach out to folks who may not agree with me, or to try to at least share why I think a way and how I came to that decision, and to learn the same from them. So if you're in that category and you want to bend my ear, let me know. That's all I've got.
Okay, thank you. We are on to non-arranged. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak again this evening, or for the first time? Okay, I'll seek a motion for adjournment. All in favor?